finish your passing out. Just hit my phone. I'd like to call to order the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board here Wednesday, November 6th. With our secretary, please call the roll.
Commissioner Alper.
Present.
Commissioner Menz.
Here.
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Rucker. Absent. Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Vice President Abeni.
Here.
President Forney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. A few announcements before we get into things. We have, I gotta count them all up. We've got two public hearings in the full board here, one at 5:45, another one at 6 o'clock, trees, and then parkways. And then we do have a public hearing at 6:15, excuse me, at the Administration and Finance. If we are not completed in the full board, we will then recess to go to that. And then just a reminder to commissioners that per our rules and everything, please notify myself or the secretary if you're unable to attend. It's really, really critical, and it would be marked as an unnotified absence if you're not notifying us. So anyway, those are two critical things for you to know, so I'll take an approval of the agenda.
I'd like to move the agenda for approval. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of October 23rd.
I'll move the minutes of October 23rd, 2024.
Second.
Okay, let's see now. Sorry, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. Okay, on to reports of appointees of outside boards, commissions, or committees. Anybody have anything to report? Yes, Vice President Abeni.
Thank you, President Forney. On October 28th, I had an audit committee meeting, and there are only 6 of those a year, so. And this, we had a report after, was the final report from an audit that impacts the park board, or was it for the park board? And I'm just gonna read from the conclusion here, it's quick. Audit has determined that the Minneapolis Park Police Department is compliant with the relevant Minnesota state statutes concerning the use of body-worn cameras. This conclusion is based on a comprehensive assessment of the MPPD's policies, data handling practices, and operational procedures. Audit would like to thank the Minneapolis Park Police Department for the assistance and dedication they shared during this engagement. Their time, knowledge, expertise provided throughout this engagement is greatly appreciated. In particular, the Minneapolis Park Police Department's transparency and communication with Audit during this engagement was exemplary. They riffed on this even extemporaneously, kind of gushing about the work, and really there were no findings, minor findings. So I just want to say nice job to Lieutenant Noble and Chief Ohado and his team.
Congratulations. Thank you for sharing that good news. Not seeing any other lights then. We'll go to our consent agenda. We'll take a motion for that, please.
I'd like to move the consent agenda as a slate.
Second? Oh, second?
Okay. All those,
There's
okay.
a light.
Okay, as far as, in addition to it, yes, Commissioner Schaefer.
I would like to pull Resolution 2024-217.
217, okay.
And preferably address the discussion after open time if possible.
Okay. That request, we will then move the slate and move that item until after open time. All right, not seeing any other lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. Okay, so then to our next item, which is several pages over, sorry. We have Resolution 2024-215.
I can move
Yes,
20
Secretary Ringel. Can we move
Thank you,
that?
President Forney. I would suggest 2015 and 2016 would wait until the public hearing on
Thank
both
you.
of those.
Okay, we're moving very rapidly here, gang. Okay, so we will then go to the North Commons Park Improvements, Contracting Goals and Methods. 5:05.
Thank you, President Forney, Commissioners, for time at this evening's board meeting. I'm here to talk about the contracting goals and methods we're using for the North Commons Park Improvements Project. I'm going to discuss the guiding principle from the long-range plan that's leading us to this work. I'm going to talk about the city systems that govern park board contracting, the affirmative action plans, target market program, and the small and underutilized business program goal setting. We're going to talk about the design contract we have and the sub-P goals and results for that, the contracting of the public artists that we've completed, the contracting of the construction manager and the sub-P goals associated with that. We're going to talk about the construction management as agency bidding and procurement method that we're utilizing for this project, talk about the contractor open houses we recently hosted, and the strategies that we're utilizing with ourselves, the construction manager RJM and their subcontractor Tri Construction for this project. Then we'll have question and answer. So the North Service Area Long Range Plan and the North Commons Park Plan within it has a guiding principle number 4. Design of all facilities should be welcoming to the North Side community and create the welcoming feeling that local neighbors are welcome in these spaces. Local artists, designers, and craftspeople could contribute to making the design welcoming. So with this guidance, the project team is striving to increase project contracting within the following areas. First, looking to find local North Minneapolis-based businesses and individuals. We're looking at minority and women-owned businesses, as well as individuals, and then Minneapolis-based businesses and individuals as a third priority. We are working obviously within the city systems that govern park board contracting, the first being the affirmative action plans. So the Minnesota Department of Human Rights sets workforce participation goals for people of color and indigenous people and women on state construction projects. The city of Minneapolis adopted these goals for city contracts over $100,000. Those goals are 32% for people of color and indigenous people and 20% for women. So we're talking about the labor workforce within these contracts, not the business owners. So businesses contracting with the city and through the city, the park board, are required to have an affirmative action plan on file with the city to enter into a contract over $100,000. However, these goals are not enforced by the city. They are aspirational goals that businesses are meant to strive for, but they are not, there's no enforcement of those affirmative action plans. The next system we're working within is the target market program, which is for contracts between $5,000 and $175,000. So the key goals of the city's, I think 2021 introduced target market program is to expand opportunities for historically underutilized small businesses, increasing competition for city purchases and contracts, and stimulating the local economy. The program is race and gender neutral, and businesses can be located in the 13-county metropolitan area. So if there are 3 or more vendors on a TMP list for a scope of work, a call for bids is released to that list, and the lowest responsive bid is selected to complete the work. The next system that's governing the contracting for this project is a small and underutilized business program, or sub-P, which utilizes a process known as goal setting by the city's Department of Civil Rights, and it governs construction and professional services contracts over $175,000. The city has an overall annual contracting goal themselves of 12% minority-owned businesses and 13% women-owned business enterprises. Together, we call those the DBEs, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprises. Each procurement opportunity itself is reviewed for specific goals based on the scope of the work, the subcontracting opportunities within that scope of the work, and the availability of MBEs and WBEs that actually perform those subcontracting scopes. So within this project, we have hired a design consultant, and we went through the sub-P goal process for that. We estimate a contract total. We estimate the subcontract opportunities that are within the scope of work that we're identifying. For example, for this project, it was architecture, and then we had landscape architecture, mechanical, civil engineer, structural, all as subcontracting opportunities, and that goes to the Department of Civil Rights. They came back with a goal of 7% of our design contract should be a combined MBE, meaning the selected consultant could meet that 7% with either an MBE or a WBE or a combination of both. So through our process, we hired Fihan Design and Architecture, and through that contract, we have 61% of that contract, about $1.87 million going to MBEs and WBEs for North Commons Park. One of the other processes we utilized was public art contracting, which you recently approved 4 contracts to go along with the City of Minneapolis's Art in Public Places program. So we have 6 individuals that have been selected to do public art integrated into the North Commons project for a total contract value of $275,000. All 6 artists are people of color, 4 live in North Minneapolis, while the other 2 have previous connections working in the area. We also went through the sub-P goal setting process for the construction manager. And in this case, they set a combined 4% goal for the construction manager as agency contract, which you approved last year. So through that process, we hired RJM Construction and their subcontractor, Tri Construction. Tri Construction is a North Minneapolis-based contracting business 5 blocks away from North Commons Park, and RJM is headquartered in Golden Valley. So within this contract, we've achieved an 18% of the CMA contract is going to Tri Construction and MBE, far exceeding the 4% goal set by the city. So now just looking at construction management as agency, as you know, we are going to be working on the North Commons project with this procurement method. What I'm showing here is basically the traditional design bid build method, where we, the owner, would have a contract with an architect. We would put out a bid for a general contractor. That general contractor holds all the subcontractors for the different scopes of work to perform that work. A vast majority of the construction contracts that you approve are a design bid build method. So within that, the architect, depending on the value of it, might be DBE goal setting, or it might be through the target market program. With our contracted work for construction, a majority of that is over 175, so those are then the disadvantaged business enterprise goal setting processes. Within a construction manager as agency, we, the owner, hire the architect. We also hire the construction manager through a direct contract. They advise us on the design process and will also be overseeing construction. We, the owner, then have individual construction contracts with what are traditionally subcontractors. So excavation is going to be a direct contract with the park board as opposed to a subcontract with the general contractor. So then within that, there's DBE goal setting for all of those individual contracts if they are over 175, and then potentially some opportunities for some scopes of work that are under 175,000, which would go through the small business target market program. So many of the prime contractor contracts are singular scopes of work with limited subcontracting opportunities. For example, like I mentioned, excavation. If we put out a bid for excavation, it's likely to be one contractor. So because of this, it's very possible the Department of Civil Rights is going to be setting a 0% DBE goal because there are no subcontracting opportunities within excavation. So to increase local minority and female participation in the construction of this project, the Park Board will need to be intentional in employing strategies to bid and complete this work. So we're working on building awareness, reducing barriers, fostering partnerships within the construction industry, and then we have bid package curation that we're working on. So the first big thing that we did is we hosted 2 contractor open houses in late October, one at Tri-Construction, one at the North Commons Rec Center, to raise awareness of the contracting opportunities within this project and to assist businesses in navigating the city systems so they're getting on the right lists so that they can be considered a disadvantaged business when there are goals that are set, or they can be on the target market program when these contracts go out to bid. We are also trying to connect local small businesses with other larger contractors that do work in the industry. Through those 2 events, we had over 80 contractors attend, so there's a lot of interest, and they met with both staff, the design team, our construction manager, the city's Department of Civil Rights was there to help folks navigate those systems, and the city's procurement division was there as well to help navigate those systems. I don't see Calvin, so I apologize, Calvin's not here. He is the CEO of Tri-Construction. The work that he's been doing both at V3 and he's going to be doing here at North Commons Park is really around identifying contractors that are newer North Minneapolis or Minneapolis-based contractors or minority-owned contractors, and really trying to create relationships with some of these larger contractors that have been doing work in this field for a long time. And so I am going to just pass it over here to Matt Lenartson here from RJM. He's going to talk a little bit about how we're going to be breaking up this project into separate bid packages to hopefully incentivize the local minority and women-owned business participation in the project.
Welcome, Matt.
Thank you for having me, everyone. I want to say that we're very excited to be a part of the project. We're excited to get it started, but in the background, we are making some headway with our team, with our project team at the Parks and Rec Board, Dan and Cliff, as well as our design team with Fehan and Locus. So the role of a construction manager allows us to be more serve as more of like a partner than as a general contractor. So right from the infancy of the project we were hired to come on board, as well as our architect team, and we're working in tandem with both Cliff and Dan, as well as the architects at Fehan. And so some of the multiple items that we work through on our design meetings is we have various budgeting exercises throughout the process, from schematic design development to construction documents and into final bidding. So a few of those budgeting exercises, they serve a purpose in multiple ways. One, it ensures the design stays in alignment with the current budget throughout pre-construction. The way we do that is we utilize real-time market feedback, either through current or recent projects that we have worked on and have done. I also work with our local subcontractors to get feedback of what the current market looks like in terms of supplies and wage rates. In the event of the project being over budget, we do work in brainstorming and offering suggestions to bring the design closer to the budget if possible. Second focus is it kind of acts as a grassroots effort to bring visibility to the project, to the local subcontractor community. So we engage our key subs, like I mentioned, for budgeting help, and it allows us to notify them of this upcoming opportunity. In terms of what Dan had mentioned earlier, we had our 2 open houses for the subcontractor community. So we were able to advertise that with our subcontractor database that we have. And I think I sent out 1,500 invites. So there's a lot of subcontractors that I've never heard of, but they're certainly in our database. So we're sending a wide net out there to make sure that everyone that is interested in the project has an opportunity to come and learn about it. One of the things we did do also in meeting some of these newer subs that are startup, North Minneapolis community based, is to help them direct them to become certified on the MNUCP list. That's the list that the Parks and Rec Board will designate as a company being small target, whether it's minority-based or women-owned. And it also allows us to introduce these small market contractors to some of the more larger established firms for possible partnering opportunities. The last thing with the budgeting is it identifies approximate values to all of our work scopes. So when we go through the budgeting is we've come together with a lot of local subs in helping with put the budget together, but it identifies how much each component of the construction is going to cost. When we go out to bid, we have two components. There's bid categories, and those are any value of contracts that are going to be over $175,000. It goes to the low responsible bidder. It's very public. It's open, and low number gets it, as long as they are responsible and have all the proper documentation. The other component is quote categories, and that's any contract under $175,000. And this gives us a little more flexibility to work with the Parks and Rec Board. So they don't have to be necessarily the low number. They could be the best value for the project. So where our budgeting kind of helps us with this is when we did our first round of budgeting is our, for flooring, for example, is our flooring came to $800,000 for the project. And so that would be deemed a bid category. It's very rigid, and it might eliminate some of the smaller market subcontractors to be able to bid on it, just too much for them to take on. So an opportunity that we have is we can break out that flooring scope and put them into quote categories. Break it out as one person possibly could be doing carpet, and that's only $60,000. Resilient flooring and vinyl flooring is another $50,000. Athletic flooring is $100,000. Wood flooring is a little more, but it gives us the opportunity to be a little more flexible with our small, diverse community with subs. So our project management team will write our work scopes prior to bid to try to get as much possible minority and women-owned businesses on the project that necessarily may not feel they have a chance at doing it, whether they don't have the bonding capacity or whatnot. But also with our open houses that we've had is we've done this in the past as well as sometimes with the bid categories being big, like Dan had mentioned, excavation. Sometimes there are just no excavators that are minority-based. One that I like to use is electrical, that's a big component. It's one of the bigger scopes in a project. Is typically we'll see some of the larger established electrical firms in town that know that there's participation goals, is they'll partner with a smaller women-owned company or minority-owned company and maybe break a piece of the pie off of their electrical scope to have them do. Could be having them do the low voltage portion. It's a little smaller value to the project. So there's a few avenues that we are working with. We'll know more once we kind of get down to our DD budget and where money is falling, so we can write the work scopes accordingly and get the best participation possible on the project.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Matt. So we'll just open it for any questions around how we're approaching the North Commons improvements contracting. If you guys have any questions, we can take them.
Commissioners, and questions? Vice President Abene.
Thank you, President Forney. Mr. Elias, I missed it at the beginning. I was, kind of organizing my paperwork a little bit. So I think this is an interesting approach. Will the contracts, the parsed out stuff, be contracted to the owner or contracted to the general contractor or prime?
Yeah, President Forney, Commissioner Benny, the subcontractor contracts, those are direct contracts to the owner. So in this model, the construction manager is advising the park board and overseeing the work. And in this way, a change order for that subcontractor, the construction manager is not getting overhead and profit on any changes. They don't profit over a change from a subcontract, which happens in a GC model. So in this case, they can be a neutral arbitrator of any disagreements between the park board and a subcontractor. But in this case, it's not even a subcontractor. They are just a contractor doing direct work for the park board.
Doing direct work for the park board, but
Correct.
they can be managed by the general contractor for schedule and
Yeah, like site usage.
quality of work and all of that.
100%. Commissioner Benny, yes, that is accurate.
Okay.
So we're not necessarily the general contractor.
Can you come to,
Please.
So we're not necessarily as the general contractors, that's where comes in as the construction manager, is we're a partner with the client being the Parks and Rec Board. And so we're an extension of the Parks and Rec Board when we're working with the subcontractors.
yeah,
And it eliminates some of the complacency and nepotism of just letting the general contractor hire who they would prefer to use. It opens up that opportunities are out there for subcontractors that don't know about the project we've never worked with, to give them the opportunity to actually do the work.
And so I'll just add, Commissioner Benny, that it's a different AIA contract that is utilized for a contractor within a construction manager model. So they are, through contract, sort of adhered to our construction manager and their oversight, scheduling, site control that exists within the overall building of a project.
yeah, I asked this, my day job, I work with a public entity that does construction manager at risk, and I work adjacent to that work. But it's the general contractor or the prime, or that's the contract with the owner, so that you're directing the work. There's no confusion about who's directing the work. I think it's one thing for the park board to have a role in selecting these other contractors. Is that a thing, or will it be RJM?
President Forney, Commissioner Benny, we won't be able to select any contractors. Depending on the value of the work, we will be going with a public bid over 175 where the DBE
that's right.
goals are set, and we'll be using the city's target market program list to when it's under $175,000, which is why we're trying to build awareness of the project to get as many local contractors on the TMP list.
Okay.
And as we identify potentially a small business that is doing low voltage work, for example, we can be strategic around making sure there's a bid package that meets the expertise that exists in the local contracting economy.
Okay, I'll have to think about this. I think it's a little bit of a hybrid model, but I did hear you say best value as well, so.
Right, so this is a construction manager as agency, not
Yeah.
a construction manager
Matter
at
at risk, right.
So it is a
Yep.
different model in that
Yep,
way.
thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Mans, just to note, thank
I
you.
see the time. Thank you,
Thank
President Forney. So can you explain how difficult or little small businesses are in getting on that list through the city? Do we have any impact on how businesses get on that list?
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, if you're referring to the TMP list, the Target Market Program list, you just have to have gross receipts of less than a certain value depending on what business you operate. So it's different values depending on what type of contracting you do. You have to be within the 13 county metropolitan area, and so it's really just paperwork. So at our contracting open house, city procurement was there helping local contractors literally get on that list that day. It isn't an onerous process, but it is paperwork, and it's something that local contractors aren't always aware of. So we're trying to build that awareness.
And so there's still time to get on that list for small businesses on the north side, and for businesses to be, or contractors to be involved in this program. That's great that we're trying to find, ways to bring in small business, specifically north siders, I would say, right, or people in that community. So thanks for the response.
To me, it's very exciting, very creative, but can you give me a directory of all the new acronyms? It would be very greatly
President
appreciated.
Forney, I'll put the presentation on the project page. You can go and find it there.
Thank you. No, very exciting. Appreciate it and everything. Sorry, but I forgot to, after my whatever announcement at the beginning, that Commissioner Rucker did notify us that he would not be attending the meeting tonight in April. So We then are going to be having the open time. I just want to remind everybody that we also have a public hearing at 5:45 and then another one at 6 o'clock, so there might be a few interruptions here. So on that, I'm going to then read our open rules. Thanks to all of you who want to share your thoughts and ideas with us during open time. Before we start, I want to provide an abbreviated version of the open time board rules. All individuals wishing to speak may call in before noon the day of the meeting to be placed on the agenda, or can sign up at the board meeting prior to the open time. I will be calling on people on the sign-up list only. Open time for public input shall not exceed a total of 15 minutes, with a time limit to be allocated by myself, the president. Please watch the timer up here to be considerate of others to speak, and stay within your allotted time. During open time, public testimony will be given without debate, and only clarifying questions from the board will be allowed. Two types of items not appropriate for open time in order to protect the privacy of all are pending litigation and personnel issues. Please refrain from commenting on specific personnel issues. We do not tolerate discriminatory and/or harassing words directed at anyone. So please ensure that all your comments you make tonight comply with the policy. The board made the decision many years ago to operate under Robert's Rules of Order. Under Robert's Rules of Order, the ceding of time to another person is not allowed. So only those signed up on this to speak may only speak for their own allotted amount of time. We also request that each speaker provide his or her address and name. And we have 8 people, so I'm going to ask 2 minutes each for each one. The first person is Dale Hume, and after that, then is Brandon Arneson. Are you here? Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Dale Hume. I live at 4230 Colfax Avenue North. And I am the executive director of New Directions Youth Ministry, which entered into a donation agreement with the Minneapolis Parks on April 24th, 2024, for the purpose of raising funds for building an outdoor refrigerated ice rink at North Commons Park. And reason I'm here tonight is that the campaign committee felt that it would be a good idea to inform you as to the progress of this project. An architect was secured, JLG Architects, to carry out the Phase 1 work as it's outlined in the donation agreement. And the Minneapolis Foundation has been entered into an agreement with to handle the money for this. The name was changed to Sports Pavilion because we felt, or Outdoor Sports Pavilion, it seemed like the major, well, because more of it's actually going to be used for other purposes than the ice rink. There will be 3 basketball courts on the concrete surface. But the emphasis seemed to be outdoors, the use of the outdoors, both for ice skating and for other sports. So it's an outdoor sports pavilion. The funding for Phase 1 work was successfully obtained on October 14th and includes a donation of $16,500 by the architects. This phase focuses on gathering community feedback and liaison efforts led by Damaris Hollingsworth and her firm Milo by Design. It also covers critical preparatory work, including reviewing soil tests, title and zoning requirements, and creating preliminary drawings, renderings, and a cost estimate. The design will accommodate a refrigerated rink with a canopy for winter skating and hockey, as well as 3 high school basketball courts for summer use. The outstanding concern is that current areas of focus include assessing budget cuts for value engineering, particularly regarding mechanical spaces for the refrigeration and the Zamboni, and considering upgrades to the warming room, which at the present size is too small. So those are concerns at the present time that we have. I have brought some one-page handouts if I...
Yep, you can just hand them over to our communications director, Summers, please. She's right over here.
Okay,
Yes.
yep,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. The next person is Brendan, and then after that is Sarah Renner.
Hey there, I'm Brandon Arneson, live at 26th Street Northeast, Minneapolis. And I guess winter must be coming up because I'm going to talk about ice rinks too. So I've lived in and played hockey in Northeast Minneapolis for over 20 years, and I understand the park board is considering cutting outdoor ice at Wyndham Park as part of a proposed budget plan, and I'm here to speak in support of outdoor ice access in Northeast Minneapolis. Growing up, hockey was always something I felt was ingrained in my local community, but not always prioritized at the city level. I frequented the ice arenas at Victory Memorial, Waite Park, and Wyndham. The former two no longer serve the community and have contributed to a growing inequality of ice access. I saw friends and neighbors leave Northeast to play hockey in suburbs with more availability. Now, due to park board efforts and programs like the Titans, there's a growing number of youth playing hockey in Northeast. Free, accessible outdoor ice is an essential component of this. I know that the park board believes that recreation accessibility and involvement is a core component of holistic growth in our communities. By keeping outdoor ice at Wyndham Park, we'll be allowing those values to thrive. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah, and then after that is Andy Benedict, I think it is. Sarah, are you here? Oh, great. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Sarah Renner. I live at 401 South First Street, Minneapolis 55401. And I am here because I would just like to encourage the board to support the amendment that has been proposed that would enlist both an ordinance and a policy measure to keep cannabis use, especially if it's smoking, keep cannabis use out of the parks, because I feel that mind-altering anything, even relatively mild ones, it just don't belong in public parks. And also, so many people are terribly sensitive to the smoke. And I think it would be an easy ordinance to support publicly, because we already prohibit alcohol, both sales, I believe, and use in the parks to begin with. And I feel that the keeping the cannabis to private use or use outside of the parks is really the best way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy, and then after that is Abby Von Goren, I think. Sorry for the pronunciation. Welcome, Andy.
Hi, thanks. Andy Benedict, 2537 Brighton Avenue Northeast. Also here to talk about ice rinks a little bit, more so from the standpoint of just a parent with kids in the neighborhood looking for things to do in the wintertime. Northeast Minneapolis had three things I thought about when I looked at the proposal of where things were getting closed. The first one, just the locations of the closures, looking at Northeast Minneapolis where we reside in particular. Removing that rink really makes it, there's a fair distance up there then between a place for the kids to go. More so than if you look at the closures that'll happen in the south. The other thing to think about is there's no other bodies of water for kids to play and skate on up here. We have lakes around the cities and different areas where kids can get outside and play on the ice, and they don't necessarily have that opportunity in that part of the area. So I would recommend, if possible, I'd love to keep them all open. I know that's not necessarily always an option, but as you're considering the opportunities. Last thing, that part of the city, small houses, lots of kids, mental health of the parents in the wintertime, they need someplace to go. So I'm just saying. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Abby, and after that is Jared Luca. Abby here, great, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I will also be speaking as a parent who lives in Northeast Minneapolis. I'm Abby Von Goren. I reside at 1942 Ulysses Street Northeast. Every November for the past 10 years, my family and neighbors start watching for the most reliable sign that winter is coming. That is the plywood and the frames for the ice hockey rink in Wyndham Park. And that is the first sign. The second sign is the faithful crew that go out and start spraying for the rink. When we start seeing that, we start rubbing our hands together. Yes, soon the ice rink will be open. This has been true for us as a family for 10 years, but it's been true for much longer than we've been there. It is an essential part of our neighborhood. It is an expression of our joyous community. It is an essential place for conviviality. We really need this place. It's been the site of birthday parties of kids in the room that I know. It is, like that dad said, a mental health issue for the parents and the kids. And my children learned at this skating rink on borrowed skates, which are provided by the warming house, how to skate. We have soup and skate parties where we all bring soup and we enjoy the rink together. We love watching the hockey and broomball matches, which are numerous and constant. I think it's really important to say, too, that it's a space used by Rec Plus from nearby Pillsbury, which enables families from all different socioeconomic backgrounds to have access to good, safe play outdoors after school. And seeing this ice rink close would close down a real vital nexus that we share. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Jared, and then after that is Angie Colbert, and we just have a few minutes before we have our public hearing.
Thanks for letting me speak. My name is Jared Luca. I live at 2627 Ulysses. I'm also speaking about ICE. I want to second what everybody has said, but one of the big things that I thought about was just the how much more time our kids are spending in front of screens, indoors, sitting down, not exercising, and not just being out with their friends. And I think that's the role of the parks, is to get people moving. And so I think having ICE that kids can walk to on their own with their friends, that they can hang out in a safe space, not with their parents hovering around and doing things, but being able to gather, laugh, be outside, move their bodies. I really think that, like Andy was saying, the closest now would be Logan, I believe, and that's quite a ways away for kids if they need a ride, which is just a heavier lift for parents to get them there, and most likely they're going to be at home. So that's all I really wanted to say. It's a great community space. I think without it, we just don't talk to our neighbors as much being indoors. So thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you. Angie, and then after that is Mitchell Hansen. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Angie Corbett. I live at 2550 Hayes. And I also want to talk about Wyndham Park. Everything that they've said is true. And I really believe if any of you were to go to Wyndham Park in the winter and skate, you would never consider closing it. It is magical. There are people from all over. There's hockey games going on, broomball games, kids learning to skate, and it's where my two kids learned to skate. And I really encourage you to keep it open. With this closure, there would only be one ice rink in all of Northeast Minneapolis, and you can't say that about any other region of the city. Every other region would have more than one. And so I think it's essential that we keep Wyndham Park open for ice. Thank you.
Thank you. Mitchell Hansen.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. Just want to kind of echo what everyone's saying here. I think it's kind of difficult when you have to pin people who like skating, kids who need like extended hours, who actually need these rec centers, all these, people that want to walk their dogs in the park without a fence, which I'm still curious about that, what's going to happen to the land south of that, whether or not that's turned into offsets, I guess we'll see. But I think that cutting any hours, debating anything with youth, when you're spending like $60,000 on goat browsing services, literally goats, for buckthorn, that's more important. Things like that are more important than kids. How is this a historic youth investment? Like, I'd love to know. It's pretty like low bar for historic then. But everyone deserves to have an opportunity that they've had that they enjoy doing, especially kids that need, cutting any hour, so you're gonna cut hours to the program to extend it. It's still confusing to me. All I know is that anything that cuts hours for children will lead to more poor behavior. That's what you do. We've all been children. That's what you do. You don't have anything to do, you get in trouble, unless you're a really good kid. Maybe that's just me, But yeah, I think that's kind of common sense. So I highly urge just to go through the contracts that the park board has. Looking at, there's some money that's gone unspent. There's money that's for ridiculous things that we don't need at all. And they all go to the same people. To me, it's just like to think of all these claims about youth and how little attention is given to them is just gross. Like, there's like maybe a couple commissioners that seem to actually care. The rest is like environmental services and benefiting downtown interests. Like, that's what matters. Undeveloped parks are non-existent parks. And I know Commissioner Schaefer really wants that to happen, and she's doing her job because she's representing the people that voted her in. But that doesn't help us all. That just makes her a good commissioner for where she lives. Thanks.
Thank you. Closing then our open time and moving then to our public hearing for our tree assessment. So regarding the tree assessment, thanks to all of you who want to share your thoughts and ideas with us during tonight's public hearing. Before we start, the board would like to provide an abbreviated version of the public hearing rules. All individuals wishing to speak can sign up prior to the start of public hearing today, November 6th at 5:45. If you have not signed up to testify yet, please do so at the entrance to the boardroom. This public hearing will have a time allotted by myself. I'm not sure if we have anybody here, but there's nobody here. Okay, so it's okay with everybody. I'm not going to read the rest of this thing. So with that, then, if I'm not seeing anybody who's going to want to speak, I will then close the public hearing. Okay, so on then to our, did we finish our conversation regarding North Commons? I didn't think I saw any other lights. So we can at least move then the first resolution regarding the trees, which is Resolution 2024-215. If somebody would like to read that for us, please.
I'll move Resolution 2024-215, a resolution assessing certain properties to defray the cost of removing diseased trees from private properties during 2023 and 2024.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Any discussion? Not seeing any lights? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. Okay, being we have not had the hearing regarding the pavements, we will move then to the cannabis. Sorry. Okay.
Do we want to go back to Resolution 2024-217?
That's my suggestion,
Okay.
is to go back then to, somebody would like to read that resolution?
Point of
Oh, wait a
order,
second, we already did.
Secretary Ringgold, do I need to move this again, or no, because it's already been pulled and seconded?
The wrong things here. President Forney, Commissioner Musich, no, it's already been moved and seconded, and it was pulled, but it would read as moved by Commissioner Musich and seconded by Vice President Abeni.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So on to discussion, if there's anybody who wishes to speak to this. Oh, Commissioner Schaefer, thank you.
I would like to submit, or just read the portion of the amendment for this, if there are no questions.
Go forward.
I will just highlight the pieces that were added. Basically, what this amendment does is adds to the public comment time the option of a draft cannabis ordinance as well as a draft cannabis policy. That's added to the title, and then it just has a change here in the middle. MPRB wishes to prohibit the smoking of vaping and cannabis, either ordinance or policy. I added one whereas statement, otherwise and then one resolved. Otherwise, most of it is just changing the language to add draft policies and draft ordinance. The whereas says, the majority of surrounding municipalities and parks have adopted ordinances prohibiting cannabis, smoking, and vaping. MPRB and the public should consider potential impact on Minneapolis parks if we choose to ban via policy and cannot enforce. And the additional resolved statement is, in addition to opening the public comment time, is as part of the public comment time, a map of identifiable Minnesota municipalities and parks who have an ordinance against cannabis, smoking, and vaping be included for public knowledge and consideration in evaluating either ordinance or policy discussion.
Doing this second?
Second.
Okay.
And I'll
Okay.
just mention a couple things, and then if Commissioner Menz also wants to chime in. Basically, this was to allow the public to give input on cannabis smoking via either method without narrowing that choice for them beforehand. This promotes transparency and education to the public around the full options that we have as a board to regulate cannabis use in the parks. And I believe listening to all perspectives will help inform and make a better informed, transparent decision when the time comes next spring. So that's the main reason. And if I can answer any questions as well. And Commissioner Menz, maybe you have some thoughts.
Yeah, and just in the future, you should ask for the permission to address us. Anyway, Commissioner Menz. Go ahead.
Was that directed towards me?
Nope.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, I think that this is just, I commend Commissioner Schaefer for crafting this amendment. I think that at times we've seen ways that we communicate with the public or the things that we put out for public comment. I think we already maybe have a direction we want to go in, and I think that this allows for multiple directions, and it's not an insult on anyone's ability to do the job of community engagement correctly. It is very challenging to do that. It is very challenging to get community engagement and, you know, opinions back. And I think that we don't want to limit those responses too early. So I commend the amendment. I'm supportive.
Commissioner Alper. Got turned off there.
Thanks for recognizing me. I would like to ask staff if they would be so kind as to pull up the presentation that was given to us probably a few months ago related to the difference between ordinance and policy and some of the pros and cons. And I'm willing to wait. And I feel like this is very important for us to revisit that piece at this moment, given that we have two possible amendments to a resolution right now. I'm just filling the time.
I know, so
for
I
you.
have to turn your clock off.
Oh, I'll quit speaking. I promise. So that's why I'm requesting this, not as a time filler, but because I think it's an important topic before we embark upon a change in the direction, quite frankly, that this board directed staff to pursue. I'd like to revisit what it means.
Thank you. Go ahead.
President Forney, Commissioner Alper, I don't have the exact presentation, but I have parts of both of the presentations that commissioners have received at previous study items. So I will kind of, I'll touch on each of these.
And just a reminder, everybody, we do have a 6 o'clock certain public hearing.
So just a quick overview. What this resolution does prior to amendment is it opens up a public comment period for 60 days on two policies, one related to adding cannabis to the existing tobacco policy, and the other one is would be a policy related to the sale of THC edibles and beverages at concessions and events. These are being brought forward to you in this way, in part because of the comments we received from commissioners during both of those study items. Once it's through that comment period, you would then, we'd have edits to them, and then we'd bring it forward to the Admin Finance Committee. There'd be a public hearing at that time period. Key things that we reviewed in each of those study items, one was a series of options that ranged from no action, so you do nothing, all the way to enacting a petty misdemeanor related ordinance, right? We also discussed what a petty misdemeanor was, and we talked about how you're currently thinking about alcohol through an ordinance in the system, and you're thinking about tobacco through a policy in the system. What we understood out of that, not unanimous, but the majority was to look at a policy and to add things to the tobacco policy. On August 7th, we came back and we talked more about THC edibles, and what we felt like we gleaned from the board at that point is interest in sales at events and concessions, and so we would be looking at that through a policy. I'm not going to go through all of the state law pieces, but what I will highlight is that the big difference that's going to happen here in 2025 is that there will be sale available. So the distribution sites are going to be, dispensaries are going to be coming online in the first quarter of 2025. I think this is a helpful slide. This is a brand-new slide. This is likely, if the amendment passes, this is a slide we would include. So difference between policy and ordinance, they will both prohibit smoking and vaping of cannabis in the parks. Policy, as we have done with the tobacco, is really enforced by community staff users, kind of following the rules around it. If it does escalate, so if it escalates into disorderly conduct, then you would be actually in a spot where you would be contacting park police, and the offense for that is actually a misdemeanor. In terms of the ordinance, if it were an ordinance itself, it would be enforceable by peace officers and park agents. The state allows up to a misdemeanor penalty and no more for that type of an ordinance, and a policy would have zero penalty associated with it. We did review what other units of government are doing. I won't go through each and every one of those, but that there is kind of beginning to be a spattering of ordinance-related bans across counties and cities. We discussed how you can, as an organization, establish ordinances. We discussed petty misdemeanor, that it's not actually considered a criminal offense, but it does appear on an individual's record, and that record is public information. It's similar to an off-leash dog violation or a parking violation. At the time, we discussed things like administrative offenses versus it being something different than that as a petty misdemeanor, so that would mean that you would kind of keep it out of moving toward kind of the court component of it. We talked about existing practices. I'm not certain you need much more than this. This might have hit the question that you had. We did go through several options, kind of like the take no option, adopt a policy option, adopt a policy with a petty misdemeanor. So we had multiple different versions that you discussed as a board. Do you? That's kind of the totality of it.
Great. I think I have additional questions. First one for Commissioner Schaefer. So is this, the ordinance as you see it, would this be a petty misdemeanor ordinance? Would it be an administrative penalty? Do you have an answer to that?
I would be looking for staff to direct that once we receive, if we received positive feedback from the public about heading that direction. I think the main thing that I've been hearing from some constituents is what we saw on the chart, that there is no ability to enforce if we end up having a problem at a location where there's a party and we can't call anybody other than just people are upset on the beach. Families can't do whatever. So I think the main piece was the easiest way to have some kind of enforcement of the rule, either through a small ticket or, I don't even remember what the administrative offense was, but I guess I would leave that to staff. My point in offering this at this point is to be able to allow the public to give input into that.
Okay, thanks. Well, since this is, thank you for answering the question.
And prior to that, Secretary Ringel, did you want to?
President Forney, Commissioner Alper, and I might ask Chief Ojado to help with this. So I think if we put it out as an ordinance, we would put it with the petty misdemeanor included with it. The ability to actually enforce this is perhaps cleaner if you actually have a citation that you can write to go along with it. And I think Chief Ojado would be able to explain that in more detail. But that's part of the existing state law, is it establishes that some things shouldn't be done, but it doesn't establish any penalties with it. So I think you'd want the public to weigh in on the full force potential.
May I continue?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So I heard you flash through some pieces about criminalization, that this wouldn't be a criminal record. I wouldn't criminalize it, but that it would go on somebody's record. And that's really concerning to me. And I realize we have a time certain item at 6 p.m., so I'll wrap it up. But I feel that we need our 30-some person police force to be focusing on violent crime, on gun violence, on major violations to one's personal body, to, major instances of theft. And the legislature has spoken. Let's put it in policy. I can't support this ordinance, or this amendment. The ordinance or the amendment.
Do we have any idea if there's anybody? Oh, okay. So I then am going to open the public hearing, and being that there is nobody here, I am going to then close the public hearing on our Parkway assessments. So just a matter of notion. Okay, I believe the next one was Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. I will not be supporting this amendment either. I've had hundreds of conversations with my constituents on this topic. They believe largely that the state law, the way that it's written, prohibiting use in buildings and around children is sufficient. They do not want to see us recriminalizing the use of cannabis by residents of the city and users of the parks. I think most of them are quite shocked that we would even be considering a policy in this regard, honestly.
Ordinance.
No,
Okay, sorry.
I'm just saying, in generally, policy, yeah, I don't believe that my voters are supportive of us really putting a policy in place. I do understand that
Sorry.
people believe that there's a need to underscore and stress what the state law says around exposing children to smoke. But yeah, I won't be supporting this amendment.
My apologies, I think I got out of order. Okay, Commissioner Schaefer's finished. Okay, Commissioner Menz.
Thank you, President Forney. I think that maybe this is just opening up like a public hearing, like to hear like what the community, so if the communities really don't want that, then that will be expressed in the hearing. I would think that would happen. Is there, I wonder if staff can answer this question. So this would be a comparable offense to like off-leash dogs, right? Anything, is there an offense or is there a citation for beer drinking in a softball dugout?
Commissioner, Secretary Ringgold, sorry.
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, first, I just want to clarify, this action actually causes us to put documents out for public to view for 60 days. And at the end of that, there would be a public hearing related to the recommendations coming forward to the board out of that review period. So it would be a draft ordinance, a draft policy, and then a second draft policy related to THC sales. So I just want to be clear on that. And then the violation for alcohol in unauthorized areas is actually a misdemeanor within the system, but I'll let Chief Ojado provide any additional detail on that.
Chief Otto?
Commissioner Menz, President Forney, I'm not sure what additional detail you're seeking. There are ordinances in the city that prohibit the consumption of alcohol in public and loitering in public with an open container. Those are both city ordinances. They're both misdemeanors. We also have a park board ordinance that essentially does the same within the park system.
And can you answer, I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, Chief Ojado. Can you answer, do we have consistent violations of that policy or ordinance in our parks? Like, do we have those things happen with our park police officers where they have to enforce that?
Enforce the alcohol-related ordinances? Yes, we frequently enforce the alcohol-related ordinances.
And then those folks so they receive a citation and then they have to pay a fine?
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, typically they would receive a citation if the officer can identify them appropriately. That would result in a citation, yes.
And that would be a higher level of citation than what we're suggesting, right? A misdemeanor is this would be petty misdemeanor?
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, that's correct. A petty misdemeanor by definition is not a crime. It's an offense. There is no jail time that could come as a result of a petty misdemeanor violation. The maximum fine for a petty misdemeanor violation is $300.
Okay, thank you. I just don't think that it's not a really big deal if people get cited for this, but it does give us, or maybe our officers, or the place where things are being abused in a way that don't necessarily support community use of the park. I don't see it as being used in a way that's going to criminalize something. It's just a way to hold people accountable within community when there's a general understanding of what should happen.
Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, several things. First off, I'll just respond to one thing you said there, Commissioner Menz, how it's not that big of a deal. The war on drugs has been incredibly disastrous for millions of lives in America. When we're talking about dismantling historic inequities, making sure that we do not continue to stigmatize and criminalize relatively, for some folks not, but relatively harmless upon society behavior, what that can lead to is folks losing jobs if that citation, that misdemeanor is on their record, and their employer has a drug prohibition policy. It could lead to not qualifying for housing. It could lead to who knows with what's going to come down the pipe, federally for applying for benefits that people rely on. If there's certain misdemeanors that could really dangerously affect people. I will also say there's a worry of lack of enforcement if we have a policy. It was very clearly written on here that if we have a policy and people do not comply, if they're having wacky tobacco parties that are getting out of hand, that can lead into disorderly conduct, which is something that we can very easily enforce with our officers. I'd also echo the importance of using our resources very judiciously and very wisely. If we have this as a misdemeanor, every time that one of our officers smells some marijuana, they are either going to have to put time into sniffing that out and finding who's doing that to issue a citation, or they are going to have to ignore that duty, which I think degrades what we are trying to do by having a highly qualified and effective police force within our parks. I will also say within this amendment, at the top here, it says, draft, for a draft THC policy, draft cannabis ordinance, and draft cannabis and tobacco policy. It sounds like we would be asking folks that we would be implementing all of these. It also crosses out when you cross out the policy versus an ordinance by adding cannabis to the existing tobacco policy. That is something that in our previous discussions, we as a board have fairly widely agreed upon, and to get rid of that, I think, is misinterpreting what we as a board have previously settled on. The added whereas clauses and the added resolve clauses are not objective, they are subjective, and they are trying to weight the scale towards an ordinance by trying to show to our constituents what other municipalities are doing. I don't care what other municipalities are doing. We're independent, we can make our own decisions, and I think we often make the right decision, so let's make the right decision and vote down this amendment.
For a second time, Commissioner Elper.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple quick points in addition. We talk about engagement. I've seen a lot of emails come through. I think we're going to see engagement from a certain sector of the population. I don't think it's going to be the people who are going to be most, who are going to be detrimentally affected or impacted by a cannabis ordinance. The people that will potentially have this added to their record. So I disagree with the idea that more engagement is always better. I think we had the right direction before, and I think we should stick with it. I also want to say that I hear you both. I happen to be a cannabis and THC edible product teetotaler, and I have 2 kids, 10 and 7, and personally, I'd rather that people don't use any of this in our parks, but I still don't want an ordinance. I want a policy.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, President Forney. I'm just curious to hear from Council Rice on, I'll be plain, I don't know the exact wording of this new state law. Can you illuminate me as to regarding, would this already be a violation? Because my understanding was the state law was, it's legalized in some sort of private entity, right, or a private space, but am I incorrect in that? And if so, what would that mean to our, obviously, our public parks?
Madam President, I'll try to answer that question, and maybe Jennifer or Pamela can jump in. The state law is a bit vague in this area. I mean, it says that you can't vape or smoke around school or children where they can inhale it, but there's no enforcement mechanism. I think I'm stating the law correctly on it. So there's this statement, but there's no, you won't do it, and you're not supposed to do it, and it kind of leaves it at that. And that's left this space where other local entities have tried to weigh in through some form, either a policy, an ordinance, or some other form. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so the state law just left it like very, very vague, where it says you can, like it says it can be up to a petty misdemeanor, but like,
yeah, I mean, you're
like every jurisdiction is setting their own policies, essentially what it is.
Madam President, Commissioner Thompson, every commissioner or every local jurisdiction, cities, counties, park districts are trying to determine how to draw the line and what form to do it, policy or ordinance, or just nothing. Just, I mean, be silent and hope people, I mean, just leave it at the state law and see what happens.
So, thank you for that, Councilor Rice. I guess I have it. My next question maybe would be for Chief Ohado. Obviously, if just putting a hypothetical out there, let's say Commissioner Albert's kids are at the skating rink in Wyndham, and someone is vaping in their face, right? Well, my son doesn't skate. I was just being joking. Okay, my own son. And would the onus be on the I guess I'm just thinking of the very squishy, vague impact of oftentimes children, which this is meant to protect, right? That they don't usually speak up for themselves, right? So at one point would a policy not enforced become a disorderly that would then put larger groups of people in a situation that maybe could have been prevented? I'm just trying to think of like what would be the real impact difference for us?
President Forney, Commissioner Thompson, I'm glad that you asked this question, because saying that a policy would not result in enforcement is not entirely accurate. Park Board Ordinance 1-4 allows this board to authorize additional rules. Essentially, this policy is an additional rule. When a rule is authorized, it allows all staff the ability to eject a person from that park who is breaking the rule. That is enforcement. The ejection is enforcement. If that person refuses the ejection, park police can be contacted, and that's when, through the ordinance that's already adopted, PB 1-4, that offense would be disorderly conduct.
Thank you for that, because that helps me very much wrap my head around this. So the policy itself would enact then if there was some sort of a conflict among parties in a park, it gets alerted to staff, and then that could potentially start a process of, hey, this is no good.
President Forney and Commissioner Thompson, that's correct. You know, we sign facilities and parks with rules frequently. I would guess that if a policy were adopted, there would be some signage indicating that smoking tobacco and cannabis was not permitted. Generally, this does not come up very often with tobacco smoking currently. I think it's, you know, either people disengage or they'll remind somebody that smoking their cigar or cigarette is offensive, and usually that's the end of it. If it were to escalate to some sort of conflict or confrontation and park police were called, we would enforce that park rule.
I'm going to have to interrupt because we're going to need to recess and go to the Administration and Finance Committee because we have a public comment, excuse me. So I'm recessing and turning it over to Admin and Finance.
Thank you, President Forney. And before I bring together Admin and Finance, I'd just like to thank you, Chief Ohado, for answering my questions. Okay, the time being 6:15, I would like to call the Administration and Finance Committee to order. Secretary Ringgold, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Co-Chair Rucker. Absent. Co-Chair Thompson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Excellent. Someone like to move our agenda?
I'll move the agenda of Wednesday, November 6th, 2024.
Excellent. I know that there's something that Commissioner Menz would like to add to the agenda that I would move to put to a vote to be discussed later. I think you all have it in your packet. It has no, does it have a number? I apologize.
There's no number.
There's no number. It's about the CIP. So I will move to potentially add this. So would people like to, let's vote. All those in favor of.
Is it, is this the resolution refunding fees in the amount of 73,000?
No, this is
a different one?
this is a different.
Okay, well, I have another one I would like to add to the agenda as well.
Well, let's vote on this one too. All those in favor of adding what I'm just gonna call Commissioner Menz's CIP resolution to the agenda, please say aye.
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 No.
And nay. So that is added.
I would like to move to add a resolution which was drafted and submitted by Commissioner Alper. It is a resolution refunding fees in the amount of $73,775.50 paid into the Dibble Hornstein Parkland Dedication Fund by the Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures for a project at 2200 Bloomington Avenue South. Yeah, this is relevant to our committee here, and it's a timely issue, so I would like that we add it.
All those in favor of adding that to the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Nay. That does not get added. So can we approve the agenda as amended? All those are in favor of our agenda that is here, plus Commissioner Menz's proposal. Please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, we have an agenda. And now, 3 minutes late, sorry, we have to move the minutes. All those in favor, or can someone?
I'll move the
minutes? Thank you.
Administration and Finance Committee meeting minutes of October 1st, 2024.
All those in favor of adding the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. And now we have a public hearing about our budget. Wow. Okay, I get to read this now. It's my privilege to do this. Thank you all thanks to all of you who want to share your thoughts and ideas with us during tonight's public comment time. Before we start, the committee would like to provide an abbreviated version of the public comment rules, which probably you've already heard. All individuals wishing to speak can sign up prior to the start of public comment today, November 6th at 6:15 p.m. The Administration and Finance Committee Chair will be calling on people on the sign-up list only. If you have not signed up to testify yet, please do so with whomever is at the entrance of the board. This public comment time will have an allotted time let's see, we have 13, let's do 2 minutes per person. During public comment, public testimony will be given without debate. Only clarifying questions from the board will be allowed. We will not tolerate discriminatory and/or harassing words directed at anyone. So please ensure that all comments you make tonight comply with the policy. The board made the decision many years ago to operate under Robert's Rules of Order. Under Robert's Rules of Order, the ceding of time to another person is not allowed. So only those signed up to speak may speak for their allotted amount of time. We also request that each speaker provide his or her name and address. As chair of this meeting, I will call for additional testifiers at the end of the hearing 3 times before the hearing is closed. So, with that being said, up first is Dale Hume, and then we have Corey Larson.
Thank you. My name's Dale Hume. I live at 4230 Colfax Avenue North in Minneapolis. And I was up here before speaking about the refrigerated outdoor ice rink at North Commons Park. Anytime development happens in North Minneapolis, you hear about underprivileged people, you hear about poor economics, and that's true. So it's an uphill battle in North Minneapolis to make things happen, which are easier in other areas of the city. One of the things that's made it possible to do good hockey in North Minneapolis is the presence of the Titans organization in Northeast Minneapolis. Anybody that's watched the Mighty Ducks knows that you get assigned to an area. And now the park board doesn't do that because the park system is kind of separate from the way most hockey is done. But the folks in Northeast have been most gracious to the people in North, and we've created a mutually enhanced system where low-income kids that come in, or people that come in through North Minneapolis can get a higher skill level and can get promoted towards levels that might lead to playing in high school hockey and so on, where they probably wouldn't get that just playing on a park team. So that's key. And any rink that they need open to make hockey work in their side is of interest to us. So Wyndham is, of course, of interest to us. The other rink that's of interest to us is Weber Park. And one of the things that we do in New Directions is we make sure that there's skates at all the north side parks. There's only 3. And that so people can enjoy the park. And but one of the things that really it hurts me is when I drive by that Weber Park, we've gone to the trouble to get skates there, put them in the cubby holes. There's no sign there or anything. There's nothing there to let people know that there's actually an activity there. You know, it's just, I don't know what that little buzzer means, but anyway, I think one thing I just point out, that maybe focus, if there could be more focus, we wouldn't have to cut things. The focus being on the emphasis of what the parks are here for, and then also, you know, making sure that we promote those things that we spend money on.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Corey Larson, and then Eric.
I have a handout again. This is from Minnesota Wild and Minnesota Hockey.
Perfect. Corey, thank you. And then Eric Vigoy. I apologize if I'm saying your names incorrectly.
Hello, my name is Corey Larson. I live at 2125 22nd Avenue. I'm here to talk about the outdoor ice closures, specifically Wyndham Park. I've been a resident of Northeast Minneapolis my entire life, and I've used Wyndham Park facilities throughout that time, including working there during my teenage years. My 6 children currently use the park on a weekly basis. In addition, though, to my personal use of the park, I'm currently the president of the Minneapolis Titans youth hockey program. The Titans subsidize 100% of our membership with reduced fees to play hockey, including providing equipment. We also provide to 10% of our membership hockey at absolutely no cost. Minnesota hockey right now, as Dale was mentioning, is very boundary focused and is considered the gold standard to provide hockey to youth in America. There, the Titans' biggest challenge is access to ice. The Titans rely heavily on Northeast Ice Arena and also easy access to outdoor ice, including Wyndham Park. Without these rinks, we just simply won't exist. We're still struggling to recover from the closure of Victory Memorial Ice. I understand the challenge to fund these rinks is difficult, but the long-term consequences of shutting down any access to ice is substantial. I ask that you reconsider your budget to find a way to fund these rinks so that families can continue to enjoy the use of the amenities that the Minneapolis Park Board has provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, and then Tony Tillman.
Hi, my name is Eric Vigo. I get a lot of different ways.
Sorry.
Fine, appreciate it. I live at 2323 Hayes Street Northeast. I moved to the neighborhood about 12 years ago, and Wyndham Park has been a great spot for my family. I've got 2 kids, and when I moved to the neighborhood, we saw the outdoor ice at that rink. My children took to it. I met people from the Minneapolis Titans, and I started coaching with them. And it's been very rewarding. I've also coached baseball at Wyndham Park. I tried to coach football at Wade Park for a while. That didn't quite take hold. But I think youth sports for our kids is really critical to their development as people, especially coming out of COVID. Gathering at Wyndham Park for the outdoor ice is very important for everybody. It's a great way to form community, meet our neighbors. I see a lot of them here tonight. That's great. When Hockey Day Minnesota came to Minneapolis, there was a video shot of what outdoor rinks mean to our community and our state. And it just emphasized all the work that goes into putting these rinks together so that people have these opportunities to connect, to develop a love for sport, develop a love for teamwork, and we're pretty unique in the fact that we do it. And when I saw the budget come out, I was pretty surprised. I saw the boards delivered to the park one day, they were gone the next. That's how I found out. It's still part of the budget to provide these rinks for other communities. In Northeast, we just have the 2. We have Logan and Wyndham. And Wyndham's the place where we connect. And it's really important for our community to have that space to continue that. And I just really appreciate the board looking at this further and making sure it's equitable for our groups, because we run practices there, we connect there. It's important for our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Tony Tillman and then Mike Snee.
Thank you, Commissioners, Superintendent, and staff. My name is Tony Tillman. I live at 1037 36th Avenue. I'm speaking about the Wyndham Ice Rink. My wife Molly and I have 2 girls, Marina 5 and Sonia 2 months. We live in the Wade Park neighborhood of Northeast Minneapolis. Marina's a kindergartner at Wade Park Community School. I'm also big through big brothers, big sisters. My little TJ lives in Northeast, attends Edison High School. The superintendent's budget includes a proposal to close Wyndham Northeast Ice Rink along with 4 other rinks. Wyndham Ice Rink is essential to youth and families in Northeast and should remain open. Here's why. First, only 3 of 22 ice rinks in Northeast Southeast, the district with the largest population and arguably the richest hockey culture, Van Cleve, Logan, and Wyndham are the rinks. Van Cleve and Logan are constantly full with adults and college kids playing nightly pickup games. It's wonderful both these get used, but Wyndham is essentially the only rink in District 1 where youth and families can access a hockey rink. Without Wyndham Ice, youth and families in Northeast are essentially cut off from ice rinks in Minneapolis. The Titans Youth Hockey Association provides relatively affordable hockey to youth in Northeast and North Minneapolis. They serve about 100 kids ages 4 to 14 and continue to grow. Titans rely heavily on outdoor practices at Wyndham Park in order to help keep costs affordable. Finally, as I've alluded to, Wyndham Ice Rink is a place of winter magic. On Friday nights, neighbors gather around a bonfire rinkside, while kids tussle for a puck or twirl on figure skates. Lights of downtown twinkle in the distance, and snow covers the old houses. Everything is perfect. It's understandable the superintendent's office is feeling pressured to close rinks after the terrible skating conditions last year. But sub-freezing Januaries are not going anywhere anytime soon, and the low angle of the winter sun is not changing. I encourage the park board to take action for the future and install more refrigerated rinks. But until then, please keep Wyndham Ice Rink open, or so much more than an ice rink will be lost. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Snee and then Mike Ulmer.
Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it. I am Mike Snee, and I'm here both personally and professionally. Personally, I've been a 30-year resident of Minneapolis, moving here in 1994. I live at 5719 12th Avenue South. I've been coaching hockey in Minneapolis for 20 years straight. In fact, I have a game at 8 p.m. tonight, so I can't stay for the entire meeting. Hockey is my passion. With 3 children, I've either been coaching with the Minneapolis Hockey Association or Minneapolis Park Board Hockey. Professionally, nearly my entire 30-plus year working career has been involved in hockey with various organizations and teams. And then this past summer, the Minnesota Wild, which from day one when they started in 2000 has been very supportive of growing hockey throughout the state, realized that more needed to be done, especially in certain areas, especially in our urban core. They created a new position which is fully dedicated to raising philanthropic dollars and reinvest it back in our special community hockey environment that we have in Minnesota and only in Minnesota. And I was the fortunate person that they hired this summer for that role. There has not been a lot of awareness for this role yet in the hockey community because we're still creating what we're going to do. If we were a restaurant, we would still be putting our menu together. We wouldn't have our doors open. We wouldn't be able to serve anybody yet. So I acknowledge that in my professional role at the Wild, I'm here prematurely. We heard about this news this weekend and we mobilized, and so I wouldn't be here if not for the news that we heard. What we ask, we want to put together a committee of people, the hockey leaders in Minneapolis, City of Lakes, New Directions, Dynamites, my association, and certainly Park Board Hockey, which I truly believe is a hidden gem. Not enough people know that young people can play hockey for $95. We need to make sure people know that. We'd like to put together a committee, and our simple ask is that you at least delay this decision 1 year to allow the Minnesota Wild to perhaps create even more reasons and a lot more reasons for you not only to not close these rinks, but perhaps maybe someday open more rinks. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mike Ulmer, and then Kayleen Marinello. I got all the letters. Sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Right. My name is Mike Ulmer, 2618 Lincoln Street Northeast. My wife and I moved here 2 years ago from Seattle. Like, I haven't lived in a cold weather climate for over 10 years. Like, hockey was not on our radar of anything that we thought our kids would be doing. And we were pleasantly surprised when we saw what looked like an ice rink going up in Wyndham Park, just 2 blocks away. Our kids were 5 and 2 at the time. They started skating there. Theo met some other Titans there, and he quickly learned how to skate. He could skate better than me right away. And he's in his 2nd year with the Titans, and he loves hockey more than anything. He's looking forward to playing there this winter. My daughter Linnea has learned how to skate there too. She's ready to join the Titans next year, and it's all because of this Wyndham Park ice arena. I grew up in Wisconsin next to a park that had an old ice rink that had been defunded long before I grew up there. And I just didn't think outdoor ice rinks were really a thing anymore. It was really a surprise when we moved here and saw that like Minnesota hockey culture is a thing. I had no idea. And yeah, it would be a shame to see this not get funded. So please continue to fund the Wyndham Park ice rink and ensure that our neighborhood kids have a place to connect with their friends and learn to love hockey. Thanks.
Thank you. Kayleen, and then Andy Benedict.
Good evening. I appreciate the time. My name is Kayleen Marinello, and I reside at 2325 7th Street Northeast. And much like my neighbors and my friends and some of the coaches and teammates of my children, I'm here to advocate for the Wyndham ice rinks. Many people have mentioned that the Wyndham ice rinks are a social hub for our children and families in Northeast Minneapolis, but I do want to reiterate the unique opportunity that Wyndham offers for all residents, young and old. And that is to experience the joy of ice skating by providing free ice skates for anyone to borrow. This allows Minneapolis residents to discover a new way to be active and allows equitable access to a sport that might otherwise be inaccessible to some. In speaking with my neighbors, each person I spoke to has a story about Wyndham. Teaching their children to skate, playing rec broomball, practicing with their hockey team, or using the ice to play games during Rec Plus after-school care. Most days throughout the winter, you can see multiple people utilizing the rinks from the moment they open until the moment they close at night. It's truly a part of the fabric of our community. Living in a state where winter is long, and statistics will tell you people in general need to get outside more, exercise more, connect with their community more. Closing a major outlet for all 3 of these seem counterintuitive to building a strong, healthy, and active Minneapolis community. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Andy Benedict, and then Mark Jensen.
Hi, Andy Benedict again, 2537 Brighton Avenue Northeast.
I'll be brief, but I just wanted to, again, reiterate how amazing it is to see all the great support specifically for this one park, but I'm sure it exists for elsewhere as well. In particular, Wyndham, though, is near and dear to our hearts, as well as all these folks. And I just want to use this opportunity to ask any questions you might have. Is there anything that we can answer for you as to why this park or another park should be left off of the list in particular?
Sorry, we can't ask.
No questions?
answer
Okay,
questions.
then I'll give my time back and look at
Appreciate
it.
it. Thank you so much. Mark Jensen and then Michelle Spangler.
Hi, my name is Mark Jensen. I live at 2227 Wilson Street Northeast in the Wyndham Park neighborhood. We've heard from a current president of Minneapolis Titans. I am a past president. Back in 2012 or 2013, when I was on the board, we had a problem to solve, and that was not enough ice time for our kids. And so I was able to work with the park director at Wyndham Park at that time to secure some ice, and we started to solve our problem. But what I realized after a year or two is not only were we able to provide more resources, but we had begun to build community, the community of Titans skaters that grew as our program grew, fueled by the kids and families that saw us there. And, you know, generally a larger community of park users, you know, our skaters, other skaters, people sledding, all bonding around the treats and the bonfires on the Friday nights, which, as other speakers have said, were really magical times. Those Friday nights were fantastic. I know things have changed in the years since I have been involved with Titans hockey, but I know that this rink is still a critical resource for Titans hockey and the community that surrounds it, and we've heard that from the other speakers. I would strongly urge you to reverse this decision to eliminate this outdoor rink and keep this resource available for the families and the Titans in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Spangler and then Mitchell Hansen.
Hi, my name is Michelle Spangler. I live at 2951 Buchanan Street Northeast in the Audubon neighborhood. And I'm also just here to advocate for keeping Wyndham Park's ice rink in the budget. Other people said, you know, many eloquent things that I just want to echo, but it's just a great community space. When my husband and I moved here in our early 20s, we moved from a place that didn't really have ice in winter. So it was really magical to find these ice rinks where we didn't have skates or anything. We could find the skates, everything we needed to have fun in the parks. And now we have kids who are on the Titans hockey team. I have a mite as well, and they practice in the parks. Wyndham is one that they can walk to. Anything else, we'd have to get in the car and drive, and you know, our lives are kind of too busy to fit some of that stuff, and that extra drive is just an extra barrier to getting to the ice. My son's finally at the age where he can walk to the park with his friends after school and have that independence and build that confidence that we always talk about we want to build in our kids. And I'll just say, in the winter, our Northeast ice rinks are fully utilized. And other people have said that there's a lot of adults and college kids, a lot of club sports, especially at Logan and Van Cleve. And once again, Wyndham is really the only one that's open for our kids to play at. So just hope you'll keep that in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Mitchell Hansen and then Ann, I apologize, I can't read your hand. Morin is, you can tell me when you get here. Ann M.
You call me? Okay.
Mitchell.
So a Trump win means that David Wilson's voluntary offset market is about to boom to billions. So that's really good news for him. You won't really benefit from that as much, but now without regulation, the city forest credits is going to lead to environmental destruction. So I know they're happy. You took our trees and you let Excel use them for renewable energy by burning them and buying the energy. You're selling them offsets so they don't need to build clean energy. You acted the community solar rewards as a reward for the people. I'd recommend that you read the Attorney General's warning against the solar renewable, what the hell's it called again? Community Solar Rewards Program as a scheme. I also wonder who you're buying them from, and sun doesn't always shine. Net zero is pretty much a hoax, and I think anyone knows that. And I think it's pretty sad that instead of actually trying to reduce things, we're just writing them off. And I really want to talk about the museum fund because it gets about $18 million a year and acts as a pass-through entity because MIA can't assess the levy on its own. MIA has like over $300 million. Pay-to-play donors get lavish and lucrative trips that cost over $1 million a year going to Luxembourg and art museums, as well as insider information used to enhance their personal collections. With $80 million in the Grand Caymans, even though the books are in Singapore and Hong Kong, along with $18 million in Luxembourg to play with, aren't they good? Don't they have enough? Why can't we vote on this? When you let the elite make decisions and determine what's valuable, you leave us out of the process and make us destitute for philanthropy and for privatization of our government. Why can we not talk about the museum budget? Like, why do they need more money? And why is every donor to 3 of these commissioners on the board of trustees? David Wilson is the main person at MIA. It's so obvious what's going on. I don't know why. I mean, it's maybe everyone can't see it, but can I go into these lavish gala parties like at MIA? That'd be fantastic because it's kind of my money too. Get it together.
Ann M. and then Lorraine Parsons. I'm sorry, Ann, I can't differentiate the R from the N.
So thank you, board. My name is Ann Munnins. I live at 2529 Brighton Avenue. I come here as a community member, a mother, a Wyndham Park, actually Audubon Park resident, and as the school nurse at Edison High School. I've raised 3 children in Northeast, and every winter has been full of days at Wyndham. We've bragged to family members from out of town and actually shown videos of our magical evenings spent on the ice. The last winter when there were 5 days, it was absolutely full of kids. My little son, who's back there, was there for over 3 hours every single day until it was absolute slush. The pickup games boosted his confidence, they boosted other children's confidence, and the adults who are there have fun. In addition, those pickup games aren't just for the boys. My daughter has played with adult men on those leagues and had a great time. She is part of one of the only teams that is a pure urban hockey team, which is a co-op between St. Paul and Minneapolis. All the other co-op teams are always Minneapolis with a suburban team, but she's a member of the Starwells. So I've seen that grow up their confidence and everything like that. But I also come not just from the Titans, but also as a community member. I've been down there and I see parents pushing their kids like in a buggy and just like people having fun, adults having fun, their kids having fun. I've often said that if my kids didn't skate, I wouldn't live in Minnesota because what are you going to do in the winter? That Wyndham Ice Rink is a community gathering spot, and it's unfortunate that Northeast and Southeast have very few. When I looked at the map, I saw quite a few down in South in that area, and they also have lakes, but we don't. So I feel like it's an equity and an accessibility issue, and I would hope that the rink can remain open. I'm also wondering why this one was chosen, since it does seem to be very busy, and most of the times I drive past, which I live very close, it's usually busy. I've lived there for 16 years. I've recently joined a broomball league, which was so fun, so even as an adult, I've been able to have new experiences. Multiple schools use it. Thank you so much, and I've seen my students from Edison there. Thank you.
Thank you. Lorraine Parson.
Hello, my name is Lorian Parson. I live at 1423 19th Avenue Northeast, and in 2019 I lost my house to a fire. And we had to rebuild our house, and we chose to stay in Northeast. Now, I don't have a fancy big lot. I have a postage stamp for a lot, but one of the reasons we stayed was because of the rink. My kid is 15 years old. He skates all the time. So on a good winter day, if we can't find him, he'll be there for 6 hours, 7 hours at a crack. And all of these families back here feel the same way I do. This sense of community is so important to us and to the health of our kids. And we as adults are equally there. So I am the manager of one of the broomball teams for the Adult Broomball League that's there. Anne's on my team. We have an absolute blast. Our kids are there skating. We have fire and ice every Friday night. Come and join us. It's really fun. The free skates allow access to anybody that wants to come and join us. So please don't take away a good sense of community that we have there. The Minnesota Hockey was creating a promotional video that was talking about Hockey Day Minnesota. They filmed our rink, our Wyndham rink. Why? Because it was busy, because it's always active. We have kids of all different ages, all different skill levels. Please keep our rink. please figure out another option. There are people that would volunteer to keep it open. There are people that would volunteer to keep it functional if that's what it takes. So we do have commitment, and we have people that are very passionate about keeping our sense of community. So Wyndham Park, please save it. Thank you.
Thank you. That is our list. Is there anyone else that would like to speak before we close the public hearing? Anyone like to speak? No one like to speak? Okay, that being said, I'm going to now close the public comment period, public hearing for our budget. And moving right along in our agenda, would someone like to move our first resolution? We will put what I'm
I'll
discussing.
move Resolution 2024-212. This is a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding amongst the City of Minneapolis, the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, the City of St. Paul, the City of St. Louis Park, the City of Hopkins, and the Regents of the University of Minnesota to solicit and procure vendors capable of providing shared mobility within all the parties' respective jurisdictional boundaries.
Thank you. Would anyone like a comment or a presentation on this? Feeling okay about it? I see no lights. Oh,
Yeah,
Commissioner
I guess I
Schaefer.
would like just to kind of have a recap of how the intern worked out on the scooter mobility, if anybody has any update on that for this summer, and how that may have affected some of our maintenance issues that we had with abandoned vehicles for mowing, et cetera.
This is unexpected. Good evening, Commissioner Schaefer. The mobility intern did some great work for us this summer. Her name is Isabella. She worked for us multiple days a week. We were able to utilize data that she captured to determine when we needed to deploy her out into the system. So we shifted her schedule after the first few weeks and really concentrated on over the weekend into the early week. She was able to move around the system on an electric scooter that we purchased. And so she was actually out on the trails. She was able to submit lots of compliance data that was crucial in our compliance meetings with the vendor, both the cities and the park boards. I believe that we had fewer issues than we've ever had. I was not contacted one time internally by staff who had issues. That's not to say that there weren't issues, but I personally was not contacted, where it used to be it would make its way to me. I would imagine that my staff did get some compliance complaints, and I'm sure that maintenance had to make some moves of some vehicles, but overall, this was the best season we've had for compliance in parking, and in response by vendors to issues. So if there was a vehicle, scooter or bike that made its way into a waterway or somewhere it shouldn't have been, as soon as we were notified, or Isabella or Dan or one of our staff discovered these vehicles, we were in touch with the vendor, and the vendor was very quick to respond. So if you see anything out there and don't have the tools at your fingertips, please let my customer service team know. They know how to contact our parking staff who manages the program. But overall, I think it was a really good use of our dollars, and our intention is to utilize existing funding within the parking budget for future seasons to staff in a similar way.
Great, I really appreciate hearing that update about next season, and I just want to tell you thank you, because I hardly had any complaints as well. And one other question, do you foresee any major changes from some of the logistics of last year's, as we go into this new contract period? Or maybe it hasn't been fully negotiated yet, probably.
Commissioner Schaefer, I don't see anything extremely different.
Okay.
Entering into an MOU with the city and other joint municipalities is something that we do to kind of give us strength in numbers. It gives us a larger market share for vendors who are looking to come to any given city. So I think that we would continue, obviously looking back, lessons learned and make adjustments. Really grateful for our partners at the city who really lead the charge on this. They have a very skilled team who work in micromobility. I don't see any significant changes to programs looking to the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other lights, let's take this to a vote. All those in favor of Resolution 2024-212, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. And now we are looking at what I have called Commissioner Menz's resolution. But I understand that this is regarding, my understanding was, which is why I voted to put it on the agenda, is getting the conversation around budget earlier. So I'm going to just read sorry, would someone like to move it? I'm moving it. I will move Commissioner Menz's agenda that we added. And I will read just the general, it's a proposal to amend the budget for capital improvement program to increase the allocation of the fields rehab category in NPP 20 rehabilitation. Would either Assistant Superintendent Schroeder or Commissioner Menz like to speak toward this to help us understand the background? Commissioner Menz.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not on this committee, and I appreciate you moving the resolution or amendment or whatever we want to call it forward. I'm not sure either. So I did submit this in the time frame based on our board rules to Secretary Ringgold and to Chair Thompson and all parties involved that were necessary. There was a discrepancy around whether or not we should submit it to the full agenda or to the Admin and Finance Committee agenda, but it's basically suggesting an amendment to the budget to increase the allocation for the fields rehab category to $400,000. I've worked with Assistant Superintendent Schroeder on how this can work. He's been working with the fields TAC and has an understanding of what might be needed there within the allocations. It's similar to the playground funding that we have through MPP 20. So I'm going to let Assistant Superintendent Schroeder let us know how the capital dollars might move around, or he might have a surprise other idea as well.
Yes, thank you. Assistant Superintendent Schroeder, can you just help me understand why we would want to consider this now and give a little more breadth, or if we should put this as part of our budget discussion in the next couple of weeks?
Commissioner Thompson, it actually could be addressed as a part of your budget discussions. You have part of the budget discussions tonight. And I think the interest of Commissioner Menz is just to keep this advancing. And in part because it came late in the sequence here. But let me just explain a few things about it. As we've been going through the Technical Advisory Committee with for the Diamond Sports group, there was a recommendation made to increase the funding that would be allocated for the rehabilitation of fields. Recognizing that the board in last year's budget had directed $200,000, and that as we get into this, we're recognizing that that's actually not going to carry us very far in that process. And as we move forward with the second sports facilities TAC related to field sports, which would be lacrosse, soccer, and football, it will also be competing for that same $200,000. So there's a recommendation that's coming forward in the evolving, soon-to-be delivered TAC report that advocates for increasing the funding for field rehabilitation. The funding source, I think, is probably the second point to look at this. And just simply for a facility of getting something forward, it was suggested that we look at how we might reallocate funds within NPP 20, and in the case as how it's written, to direct dollars from the capital portion of the program into the rehabilitation program. Even in discussions about this with Director Arvidsson today, we realized there might be some other methods we could be doing that. And so if the commission, if the committee acts on this, it might be fair for us to bring forward options for how we fund this, as opposed to directing it solely to allocations coming from the capital portion of the fund.
Thank you. So if we advance this tonight, would there be time to hash out what the impact to the budget would be?
I'm sorry, Chair Thompson, that's exactly, that's what we want to do. This needs to be budget neutral. It's the reason why we suggested that it stay within MPP 20, so that we're not taking funds from any other source. But there might be other options within MPP 20 than what was framed in this document.
Thank you. I am seeing lights. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, Chair Thompson. I will not be supporting this amendment this evening, and I would ask my colleagues not to advance it at this time either. We have zero idea of what impact this will have, and for those of us that have already seen projects in our districts delayed an entire cycle because we pushed everything out for 1 year to accommodate the increasing cost of the North Commons project. I believe we need to fully comprehend what doesn't get funded if we make this allocation change. Does it mean a park in my district no longer gets funding for a playground that you can't play on because the equipment has fallen apart? Does it mean that we're not going to be able to invest in other intense needs that we have in those parks because we've chosen to invest in athletic fields instead? I think we deserve to know that before we vote on making an allocation change. So I will not be supporting this amendment this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, I don't think I will be supporting this either. It kind of dawned on me as reading this that we would be using what we take away from using equity-based criteria, but the very addition of this $200,000 is not using our equity criteria. It's completely outside of that process. And it's kind of to move forward priorities that might not be shared by our larger community. And so it's something that I don't think is, it doesn't rise to, I can't support it. Yeah.
Thank you. Vice President Abeni.
Thank you, Chair Thompson. I'm not on this committee, but I just briefly weigh in. I think that the report that's coming out will indicate maybe a need for increased funding to improve the quality of the fields in the system. And I totally get where you're coming from here, Commissioner Menz, but I don't hear the support here right now. But I'm hoping that the report will make some recommendations that we look for additional funding for the fields, and that we tackle it as a board at that time. That's it.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I would be interested in learning more about, I'd be interested in supporting this possibly if we knew where the funding was coming from. So maybe we could just bring it back to admin finance next cycle, because I really think we need to look at the whole cadre of all the amendments that may be coming forward. Mm-hmm. Because then we can see the full picture of what we may want to tweak, what we might want to change, and then we can prioritize as we can. The other piece of this that I'm not sure if you can get to before the next 2 weeks, but I would like to understand, with our recent meeting with Minneapolis Public Schools, how is Title IX figuring into this funding, and how are they giving us any commitment on those fields, and how, if there's any overlap in that work, I'd like to understand that as part of this, as part of that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I would love to hear a final comment, Commissioner Menz, from you, and then I have a couple questions for staff. Thank you.
Okay, I did, thank you, Chair Thompson. I did have my light on for another 1:45.
Oh, I apologize.
It moved, and so I was going to give a little bit more clarity. To Commissioner Schaefer's point, yes, there's a lot of overlap here. This is a result of the committee and the citizens and multiple groups coming together and saying we need improvements for these facilities for girls, and I think that's pretty important. So we've noticed discrepancies with our fields. This is within what we're supposed to do under NPP 20, but the fields always get usurped by the playgrounds. And although I don't want anybody playing on a dangerous playground, we also don't want people playing on dangerous fields. And I think that we all want to not think that this is important. And I want this board to understand that these things have value. And I'm trying to put this forward because I've gotten in trouble for not going through process. This is the process. I have gone through all of the steps to make sure that we're putting these things in place. And I hear Commissioner Olson's concern about funding and equity. I think that that's a valid concern. I don't think that the fields a lot of times are involved in that because there's a lot of equity going into that decision and when we invest in those spaces. So how we put that into a document or a form is one thing. So it's just my community and the communities that I have talked to and the balance with young people. We need to start investing in these assets. These fields are assets, and Superintendent Bangura will say they are strong assets. They are used by the community, and they can be used for years to come. But if we don't maintain them or take care of them, it's not going to happen. I'm really encouraged. Assistant Superintendent Schroeder has been super supportive of this work. I really am looking forward to you all seeing the TAC report that was created because there's been some really great work. I know that the school board and the park board are working together. These are important issues for females. It's a Title IX issue sometimes. Some of these improvements are going to make it so that not the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, but that MPS is compliant for where kids are playing on those fields. So please reconsider if you have any questions over the next few weeks about this amendment or what this funding could do to help us be accountable and responsible to the citizens who utilize a lot of these spaces. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Menz. I have a question about I suppose the Roberts rules would be the
Point of parliamentary inquiry.
There it is. Thank you. I don't know that, hearing my colleagues, and I don't know the impacts of this, so I don't think that I can support it in this moment myself, although this is an important issue for me. I'm wondering if the better move would be to table this or to have us vote it down and retool it and bring it back in a different form that's a little more, I don't even know, written in our normal capacity that we have the budgetary impacts, I suppose I should ask. Is there a better, one way better than the other, Council Rice?
Madam Chair, I think it's at the discretion of the committee. You could lay it over, or you could postpone it, or you could amend it. It's whatever the desire of the committee is.
Then I'm going to make a motion to table this with the idea that we might retool it. All those in favor of tabling Commissioner Menz's non-numbered resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So I think it's on the table now.
It's been tabled,
It's
yes.
been tabled. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Those are our action items. Would anyone like to move our
We don't need-
our study report items?
I believe you can just
I don't need
start
to.
them.
We're
Chair
on
Thompson.
to our discussion regarding the fundraising agreement with Phelps Athletic Council.
Chair Thompson, I have a few slides, and there's probably a few questions that all of you will have as we move through this. So I will provide a bit of background and kind of take you back through several years. Just to familiarize everyone, this is Phelps Field Park, and I'm showing the existing conditions out there, or the near existing conditions, because there have been some improvements to the playground area that I'll show us a slide of it better. But essentially, the long-range plan in the field area perpetuates the two ball fields and the large open space for the field sports, and it's actually recognized that way. The athletic field layout features two multi-use diamonds and a large multi-use field as today. These are the improvements that have been made: the splash pad and a playground that have been added in the last couple of years. This action or this discussion results from a discussion that goes back to June, actually probably even before June of 2021, when the board approved Resolution 215 for the intention of the Phelps Athletic Council to raise funds to convert the existing field to an artificial turf field. And I'll come back and provide a little more detail on some of those initiatives. The process went forward. The Phelps Athletic Council wasn't able to raise the requisite funds. They requested an extension of the timeline, and a few other things relating to corporate donors in 2023. That resolution was approved, but since then, the agreement has again expired. We've been trying to get this organized so that we would have time to implement a capital project if the funds weren't raised in adequate time. There was an effort to bring forward in September of this year a resolution that would approve essentially amendment number, I think it should be amendment number 2 to the fundraising agreement that would extend it until March 31st, 2025 next year. And it also incorporated some provisions approved through the last resolution that were never incorporated into an agreement. This item was never brought forward for consideration by the board. A few more details. The Phelps Activity Council has raised some funds. They started with an NFL Foundation grant of $250,000. They always include the Hennepin Youth Sports Grant that was directed to this project through your efforts, through the board's efforts, of $200,000. They've received funding from the Twins Foundation, Adam Thielen Foundation, the Minneapolis Foundation, and the Vikings Fine Fund to an amount of $747,000. Remember, that includes the $200,000 in the Hennepin Youth Sports Grant that's actually contributed by the board. They've also come to an agreement with an organization called Yellow Tree Construction that we essentially build the improvements, donating their labor to the effort. I'll note also that earlier this year, after the expiration of the fundraising agreement, that LISC, the Local Initiative Support Corporation, stepped in to assist with fundraising efforts by providing a consultant. I don't know that has actually proved to bring more dollars into this. The list that you're seeing up above is what I received from Pastor Halber today, and it seems to be essentially the same as what we've seen in the past. So this is the status of our funds and potential activities. I note the $200,000 that we have in the Hennepin Youth Sports Grant directed towards field improvements. We still need to define a match for our portion of the funds. The grant deadline had expired or was expiring. I'm sorry. It was set to expire at the end of this year. We have received an extension from Hennepin County for the grant deadline, and our capital project has been on hold for this entire period. And it's important for me to reinforce that, because the field that's out there is not probably much different than a lot of our fields. If you see something green out there, it's likely a weed. The soil is compacted. It's not a good playing environment, and it really deserves to have some kind of work done to it. And while the $200,000 won't get us all the way there, it is a significant start in rehabilitating the turf of that field. If we were to look at this as a capital project, using those funds that are available from the Hennepin Youth Sports Grant, we could begin design and engineering yet this year and into early next year, bid the improvements so that we could be completing work in 2025. There's always a grow-in period that we allow the fields to kind of establish themselves before we take over. So this would probably, the work would probably kind of extend into early 2020, into 2026 with that grow-in period. I thought I would just phrase a couple of options because, and this is really the discussion that I think many of you would have wanted to get to. We could allow the fundraising agreement to simply expire, and then we would be obligated to seek funds to match the Hennepin Youth Sports Grant, and we would start on our project to advance the improvements of the field. We could bring amendment number 2 back to the board. That's the one that extended it until March of next year with some other provisions. And then we would essentially be delaying our capital project again for a year, or starting on the conversion to artificial turf if the fundraising were to prove successful. And there might be some other direction you could ask us to look at as well. And that's it.
Thank you for that. I already see Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, Chair Thompson. As the district commissioner that represents this area, I know that people want to see this field renovated. I know they're frustrated that we've had funding for it for 3 years now. Well, I think we might have initially gotten the funds in 2020.
I think that's correct.
So it's been 4 years now that we've done nothing while we've sat with that money, and I think they would like to see us renovate these fields. Looking at the amount of money fundraised by this group, I have some serious doubts that they'd be able to close that delta of over $1 million that exists for what they're attempting to try to fundraise for in a timeline that allows us to still retain the $200,000 we have to do not an artificial turf field, a natural turf field. So I would like to see us give some guidance to staff to proceed with getting a field renovation done here, as we promised the public we would do when we sought funding for it back in 2020.
Thank you. Commissioner Menz.
Thank you. I'm not on this committee, so thank you for letting me speak to this issue. Do we keep the 200,000 even with the artificial field? I mean, not having an artificial, even if it's just a natural grass? What happens to the Hennepin County Youth Sports funding?
Chair Thompson, Commissioner Menz, either way, it would be wrapped into the project. The $200,000 would either go toward our originally intended field rehabilitation project or towards the conversion to artificial turf.
So
we don't lose that, is what it is.
Okay, because we obtained that grant from Hennepin County, not Phelps.
Yes.
Council. Okay. And then that's the extent of what we have to rehabilitate that field's natural surface?
Chair Thompson, Commissioner Menz, I need to talk more with my colleagues in asset management to see if there are other things we could be doing for the rehabilitation of that, but that's the core we would be starting with. I noted that we would have to find some amount of matching funds to help us out with this, and that's really the next step. If you direct us to pursue a restoration of the natural turf field, our first task would be to get a project strategy aligned, including finding the matching funds that are necessary for the Hennepin Youth Sports Grant. It's possible that some of the funds that have been raised by the Phelps Athletic Council might be applied to something other than an artificial turf field. We haven't raised that question yet, but we could be asking that question.
Okay. So that we should expect a resolution to come before committee on deciding on this, because we're just asking for direction here, right? Is that because it's a discussion item?
Chair Thompson, if I may, Commissioner Menz, from staff's perspective, the fundraising agreement has expired. The only reason you would want a resolution is if you want to be definitive about how you want staff to proceed. Lacking an extension, we will be embarking on the process of using the $200,000, finding the matching funds, seeing if there are things that we could be doing internally to help move this along with the limited funds that we have available.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I do think that at some point this board's going to have to reconcile with how we feel about artificial turf. This might not be the place where we have to have that push point, but I do think that from my colleagues' perspective, working with fields, I think that at some point we're going to have to figure out what our stance is on that. So, thanks.
Commissioner Music, please.
Thank you for allowing me to speak a second time on this. When we initially received the funding for this, we were intending to implement the master plan as adopted, which was for a natural turf field. Is that correct?
Chair Thompson, Commissioner Music, that's correct.
And we were bypassing what was recommended to us by the public with the resolution to engage in a fundraising agreement. There is no amendment on the books to the master plan for this location for artificial turf field with that expired agreement. Is that correct?
Chair Thompson, Commissioner Music, the first time that the fundraising agreement was crafted, it included a process for amending the master plan that the Phelps Athletic Council would be funding. If we were to amend this, that would still be in place, and we would still need to be going through an amendment process to move to artificial turf.
Okay, so the master plan is still calls for natural turf field in this location.
Chair Thompson, Commissioner Music, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other lights, it's an interesting segue as we're just talking about fields and field improvement and allocation of funds. So the 200,000 that we have allocated, how long have we been sitting on that with extensions with the county?
Chair Thompson, I believe
4 years?
this was a youth sports grant in 2020. So
2020?
Yeah.
And so they've been generous to give us this repeated extension.
Yes.
Seeing no other lights, I'm ideologically opposed to turf. That's a different story. But it seems like if we, which I agree with Commissioner Menz's earlier a resolution about fields, that we are in a bit of a budget crunch, and they do need repair. And I would highly recommend and like to see us just move forward with what we have. I think that would probably, if you're looking for just brass tacks, that's what I would say. Seeing no other lights, I thank you so much for your time and for that. I suppose now we get to talk about the budget again with Director Weissman. This is the gift that keeps on giving until Christmas.
Good evening, Chair Thompson and Commissioners. Before we get started with the budget discussion, I did want to take just a brief opportunity to kind of ground us in a higher level overview of what has been funded in the superintendent's recommended budget and what has not. And the documents that I'm utilizing are from our board budget retreats. So the first document that I'm going to reshare just shows the priority themes that came out of the conversations with commissioners and the categories of climate, natural resource forestation, forestry, recreation and youth, the commitment to investing in employees, and then our infrastructure work. We have 3 performance goals and budget actions that will need to come before this board, separate from the budget adoption, to make modifications to those goals and budget action for 25 and 26. So during our budget retreats, we talked, and the study reports prior to the budget retreats, we talked about all the pressures that were going to be part of our budget process. And then we also discussed the strategic directions and performance goals and what budget needs we had associated with those goals. And then finally, we talked about one-time, mostly capital investments that we needed to make and try to find funding for. So this first one really shows kind of those current service level impacts to our budget. And I wanted to just kind of, if you go through this list, almost all of these are addressed in the superintendent's recommended budget. There's just 2 at the bottom of the list that didn't make it into this 2-year budget. And what I'll say about it, and then I have if it's one time, if it was a service level reduction, how we funded those things that were included in this budget. So you'll see for Graco system equity investment for Graco Park in 2025, we were not successful in getting property tax support for that. So we have identified one-time funding to open the facility to a limited capacity. And then you can see that in 2026, we do have the plan for asking for property taxes for both Graco and Upper Harbor Terminal Parks. You'll see that the investment in wage and benefits that was supported by property taxes, the state mandates for the state family medical leave program and workers' compensation. The workers' compensation was not supported this year, and so it will be asked for again next year within the property taxes. And then for materials, supplies, and contractual services, the restoring of our spending power, you'll see that we wanted to increase in 2025 to 4.5% increase, but that was not supported, so we increased by 2.5%, and our plan is to ask for a full 4.5% in 2026. And then we have the legal fees. We are doing a service level reduction in order to fund that increase in legal fees, and that is quite a bit lower than what staff was recommending for that item. When we get into our strategic directions, there are only 3 that received funding in 2025, and that is the GIS system for tracking data on park access, and then $136,000 for tree planting that we identified other revenue sources in order to accomplish that. And then the implementation of the citywide free and reduced cost youth programming strategy, we did receive property tax support for that item. Of the ones that were not funded, you can see that the majority of these have a higher number in the pause or revisit in 2027. So we're starting to get some feedback from the board that they may be willing to hold on some of these strategic directions until they can be revisited in 2027. For the one-time costs, there is only one that was funded, and we utilized one-time funding in the IT department. We felt that it was really important to improve the internet service in our recreation centers. So we're holding a position open in order to convert 24 sites to copper internet circuits. And then again, you'll see that of the other one-time funding, the communication that we received from commissioners during the budget was that these items would need to be paused and would be revisited in 2027. And that's what I have for you. You all have in front of you the commissioner questions and responses. I'm going to leave one up here at the podium in case you have a question for one of the other directors so that they can refer to it. I'm also going to leave a budget book up here at the podium in case you need to reference that. And then before I open it up for questions, I will just say that if you have additional questions that come up for you after this conversation and before the next board meeting, we need to have those questions to us by November 13th.
Any questions from commissioners? Yes, Vice President Abeni, just right to the top.
Well, since no one else was putting their light on, and I'm not on this committee though, Chair Thompson, so thank you letting me ask a question. So this one maybe is just a basic question for Director Wiseman, but toward the end of your presentation, you talked about the things with the higher number that might be delayed to 2027 in the strategic directions. But theoretically, this current board won't have much of an impact on 2027, right?
Chair Thompson and Commissioner Benny. I'm sorry. Does this board adopt the 27 budget before the new board is? Or is it the 20? I'm sorry, I'm getting it's 26, right, okay.
Okay,
Yes.
that's helpful. Okay, thank you. That was one question. And then I do have I wanted to ask, I had asked a question in my submitted questions because I thought that about the city's biochar program, and, I'm just thinking about the cost of tree debris removals, pretty high in the budget. And you said you're looking at maybe something that will be explored. And so do we know anything about that? I don't know if there's a way to make that a cost savings to the organization, and otherwise and maybe this is premature, and maybe it's nothing. But also, is there a way then and whose tree debris are they going to be using? Is it private property tree debris when we have all this public tree debris? But yes.
President Forney, Commissioners. Yeah, so we have had conversations with the health department on the biochar in the past. We haven't had any recent conversations with them, and when we became aware of the plans for their capital investment in a biochar caught our eye too. So we'll definitely be reaching out to them, and I would assume that our tree debris would be of great interest. In the past, the conversations have kind of centered around the quantity that we have and kind of the species composition, because that can play into some of the stuff too. So yeah, it's a little premature because, as I understand, they have this funding, they have this project. I'm not sure where they're at in the construction, if they've broke ground or if it's just been a funding commitment. So and I believe it's Jim Doughton with the health department that oversees their biochar.
Well, I mean, I went to their website. I don't know, but it did say that they wanted to start production by this winter. Does that seem unlikely? I mean, that's what it said. And would there be, do they need a lot of tree debris or?
I don't know the numbers.
Okay.
I can't remember them off the top of my head. I do recall meeting, there was a consultant firm that had been engaged that was pursuing a grant for an incinerator.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we were talking about the potential of setting that operation up just south of our tree debris lot. And that was when we were getting some of the quantity information together from at the time we had someone that leased and processed our wood debris. And we were able to provide them with the volumes that we were generating then. And at that time, the hurdle, as I understood it, was we could produce a lot of biochar, but we didn't have a use for it yet.
Okay, well, I'll be one of those people that probably wanders around just asking about biochar now. But I think that if our source material has any value, that would be cool. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
President Ford, Commissioner Benny, if I could just say, the value may be in saving the money it costs us to dispose of it. Yeah, I don't think they will pay us for it. I think they would take it for free at best. Yeah, so I'll just be clear. Yep.
Yeah. Commissioner Schaefer.
Yes, I had one question about any state revenue streams possibilities for 2020 next year around copper wire theft. Have we heard any rumblings, or do you think that would be on the agenda for next? I mean, we're taking from sidewalks and pavements to give to copper wire. I'm just curious if there's opportunity that you may hear of.
Let's see, Madam Chair, Commissioner Schaefer, we're always on the lookout for money wherever we can get it. I'm not aware of any.
I know.
Is there any money in my pocket? No, but we'll, yeah, we're always heads up, and we might, I don't want to drive us into a ditch. There was an election yesterday that had some consequences for us, so we'll be talking about that later in the month, but we'll keep on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, I just was
Yeah,
curious.
no, good thinking. It's a good reminder.
Commissioner Menz? No, okay. I don't have any questions yet because this is always such a robust thing to think about. But I want to thank Director Wiseman, and I don't see any other lights from my colleagues. So with that, I will adjourn. Oh, wait, sorry, please, Director Wiseman, please, go ahead.
Chair Thompson.
It was
one
close.
thing that-
No, I'm just-
Yeah, one thing I just forgot to mention is that for your amendments, we would like to start kind of tracking those and getting those in so that we can provide them in kind of an organized manner for you to prioritize. So if I would ask that if you're submitting an amendment to the agenda, if you could also CC me on that email, just so that I can have it and kind of start tracking those in a kind of a markup type spreadsheet.
Thank you so much, Director Wiseman. And with that, at 7:30, I will call the meeting of the Administration and Finance Committee closed.
I will reconvene then the full board here, and we have several items that we kind of are dangling. So I just want to make sure. So first of all, have we finished completely the discussion regarding North Commons? Was there anything more? Yes, I thought, yeah.
We were in the middle of the cannabis discussion.
Right, but we had a presentation, and I wasn't sure if you had gotten, somebody didn't get their question answered. Oh, is that the one? Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to make sure. And then we also have then the Parkway assessment we still have to deal with. Okay, back to cannabis. All right, Vice President Abene.
Thank you, President Forney. My question's quick, and I wonder if I might be directing it to Secretary Ringgold.
Point of information, are we still talking about the amendment?
Yes, we are talking about
Yes,
the
I believe
amendment.
Yeah, the amendment, yep. During public comment, there'll be a structured public comment format, right? Some multiple choice questions perhaps, or open formats or something like that. What does it look like?
President Forney, Vice President Abeni. So there would obviously be the documents, and we'd be asking the respondents to respond to each of them in terms of do they have any recommended edits. I think in this case, what I would also anticipate is providing some context that says the intent of this or this particular policy or ordinance, depending on where you all land here, is to do a specific thing. And then the question might be, do you feel like it meets that? Do you feel like it goes too far? Do you feel like it doesn't go far enough? So I think there would be some ways to get some input for commissioners to know, not only structurally might there be edits individuals would recommend, but also to give you a sense of kind of whether or not the respondent feels like you've gone, maybe you're perfectly right on it, or you should have gone further, or you have gone too far.
That's super helpful. In fact, that's the way I had written it down here. So if this amendment doesn't go forward and we move with the original resolution with the public comment plan, people should be encouraged to also express that they feel that it meets the mark, doesn't go far enough, or is overkill. So thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I'll just kind of do a final wrap up here, but I really think this is, the point of the ordinance was to do a bit of education with the public. I think we all went through a process of education between ordinance and policy in our own discussions around this and what the impacts would be. So I do think that it is an important topic that I think the public would like to see what a mock-up of what an ordinance would look like, what a mock-up of a policy. And it's a clear delineation and feedback without then having to do another public comment time about an ordinance if we get feedback on policy is not going far enough. This is something I've heard a lot about from my constituents, and so that's why I'm bringing this forward. Do I really have a personal interest in this? No, I'm trying to do my representative job. And I feel like for us as a body, we shouldn't feel threatened by putting additional options out for the public to comment on. We have CACs that think of everything under the sun that we could put in a park. Nothing is off the table. And I think in this case, for us as commissioners and staff, to take the ordinance off the table before public time is really a mark against us and our transparency. And we're gonna have lots of time, if we get feedback or when we get feedback on both of these options, to vote it up or down. And I understand my voice is the minority at this point, leaning towards wanting to even get this ordinance information, let alone vote for it. So I understand that, but I think as a board, we have a public responsibility to really put forward as much information we can about one of the most important decisions we're going to be making in our board term. That's going to affect the practical use of our parks. And that's the main thing I hear. It's not that there are people worried are going to get disorderly on the beach and have to call the cops to arrest them. It's the smoke of 1 or 4 can really affect the experience, the quality of the park experience for everyone in the vicinity. It's not, I've had users tell me they don't want it in the parks because of that reason, right? Okay. And so that's my motivation. That's my reason for bringing this forward, and I don't want to give families and children more experience to continue leaving the city of Minneapolis by these kind of policies where we are not following what a lot of people around us are doing and could experience overflow from that. And I'm not saying we don't choose our own way, but I'm saying we have to look at what our surrounding communities are doing because it will indirectly influence our parks. And so I respect my colleagues' decisions today, but I also ask you to respect my input that I've heard from my commissioners and my desire to hear more and to get more data. We haven't even gotten data around all the communities that are.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, President Forney. Commissioner Schaefer brings up some good points about our community engagement and about our obligations to everybody, although if I'm reading the room, I don't think that an ordinance would pass this board. I'm curious what extra burdens would potentially be put on staff to, in this 60-day comment period, I genuinely don't know, would it become more burdensome, more confusing? I feel like we thread the needle sometimes to trying to being open, but it's just as a smokescreen because we know we're not going to vote a certain way anyway. That I'm sensitive to how these procedures go down sometimes, if we're even open to, if there was a flood of public comment. So I guess my question, and I'm not sure on staff who would best be able to answer this, but would it be overly burdensome if we added this language in or added that part of the process into the 60-day engagement? Anybody dare want to make a decision?
Deputy Superintendent?
Yes.
President Forney and Commissioner Thompson, I think, the biggest additional work is the front-end work and trying to have it presented in a way that makes sense to the respondent. I think there is also something that anytime you're thinking about community engagement, it's a bit difficult to do it well if you're presenting something that you know isn't going to happen. So I do think that if this board has no intention of passing an ordinance, you have to consider how you will manage the fact that you collected information on it if you knew you weren't going to say yes to it. And that's tricky, it's not impossible, but I think that actually is less about a staff burden and more about a board burden, because we are in a position that we will put out what you ask us to put out and the type of information you feel you're going to need to make a decision.
Thank you. I think that's my concern. I support Commissioner Schaefer and Commissioner Menz's idea, but as we're talking about 2026, it'll be a different group of people, and we're not going to be making that decision then. And if it doesn't take a math teacher to count to 5. So I don't think that, I just am feeling like this would never pass this particular group of people. So in that regard, I just feel like I can't support this amendment, but I really appreciate the intention behind it. And it just challenging. I'll say it is for me as a person where to land. Thank you.
Not seeing any other lights to the amendment to the resolution and everything. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye to the amendment to the resolution.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
That fails. So back to the main motion, and any questions, any discussion on the main motion? No seeing any lights. Okay. All those in favor then of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That action carries. Okay, then I think our last item might be the resolution.
I'll move
regarding-
resolution 2024-216. It's a resolution assessing certain properties to defray the cost of St. Anthony Parkway paving improvements adjacent to private property.
Second?
Any discussion on that item? Any discussion? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That action carries. Okay, what are we on to now? We are on to reports of officers, is that right? I want to make sure that I've got the right, we've weaved around so far.
I was almost in shock there, so thank you, President Forney and Commissioners. It's always a pleasure to share the great work that we do in our park system. And again, it's always around our strategic directions to tie into the board's direction and to give highlights to those. So again, we'll kind of follow that path, of course. So we'll start with strategic direction A. The nice picture will come here in a moment. Act boldly for our climate future. Lake of the Isles Island restoration. This is really cool. I've always been fascinated by that. We did the Lope, what's it called? Where we do the, what's the, I can't remember what it's called, where you do the skiing, you do all the walking.
Luminary?
Luminary, thank you very much. And I've always was curious to just go on the island, but never did, of course. I was too scared to go too far out, but this is wonderful work here. But our MPRB, our natural resources, has begun restoration work on the islands at Lake of the Isles. The first round of buckthorn and other invasives were removed on the northernmost island over the summer and into the fall. Subsequent invasive species removal will continue on the northernmost island and expand into the southern island starting in 2025. Despite the presence of buckthorn and other invasives on the site, there is a surprising richness of native species persistent on the islands. Other invasive species have been removed on the islands. Follow-up seeding and planting with additional native species will occur to further enhance to restore native species diversity. And I'll be clear, no one is allowed on the island, so I'll make sure that that is clear, but they've done some great work out here, and very excited about the work that's being done there and restoring it to its natural habitat, which is really great. So thank you to our team that was out there, and very grateful for that. Strategic direction B, cultivate each community's place and honor cultural traditions in Minneapolis parks. Awamini Festival. The Awamini Falling Water Festival is a celebration of indigenous Minnesota culture that takes place every year along the Mississippi River. This year, the festival took place on Saturday, October 12th, from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock p.m. at Waterworks Park and the Mill Ruins Park, a space that is also known as Awamini Amini. The MPRB's community events team worked with Carrie Day Aspinwall, the MPRB Indigenous Parks liaison, as well as Deanna Standing Cloud to coordinate the festival. The MPRB received a grant from the St. Anthony Falls Heritage Board to produce this event. The Falling Water Festival included over 30 different Indigenous vendors, nonprofit organizations, and artists. Indigenous food offerings were available from Tananka Truck, Powwow Grounds Fry Bread Factory, and the Wana Wota. Music performances were provided by Steve Turner, James Harvin, and War Bonnet. Dancing and drumming demonstrations were provided by Bear Runner and the Twin Cities Intertribal Dancers. Attendance this year was approximately 5,000 guests. Next year's festival will be on the Father Hennepin Park side of the river due to the bridge construction. Amazing event, and grateful for our team that put that together every single year. They do wonderful work on that. Strategic Direction C, implement quality youth and intergenerational programs. Southwest Skate Park event. In September, Forum Pillar Coffee and Skates Shop collaborated with the park board to organize the inaugural Painter Park Cleanup and Skate Contest. The event saw participation from 75 youth and adults within the skate community and the Lindale neighborhood. Together, they not only enjoyed the skate contest, but also joined efforts to clean up the park and surrounding neighborhood. Strategic Direction D, care for park assets to meet evolving needs and practices. OpenGov cardiograph software certification. I've never seen someone so excited about a certification, but that's pretty cool. In mid-October, Kelly Armstrong earned certification as an administrator for OpenGov cardiograph asset management software. It's a mouthful. The certification allows Kelly to help the organization leverage cardiograph by making the best use of its features for documenting, updating, and communicating data that tell the story about our park assets, amenities, and maintenance performed. Really cool. Another move, again, that we do such amazing work around our tech and our transparent to our public, which is really fantastic. Strategic Direction E, steward our natural resources. Tree watering and training. In response to the dry weather we've been having, crews have been watering trees throughout the city. In addition to the watering, crews attended the ACRT electrical hazard training. This is a 2-day class designed for tree care employees whose work requires a 10-foot safety zone around energized wires. Completion of this class satisfies the requirement of OSHA 1910.331. So with that, President Ford and Commissioners, that's what I have. Any questions? We are definitely available for any questions. So thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. First of all, any questions, commissioners? Always love it. Well, I'm not seeing anything. We will then go to petitions and communications, and I'll start with Commissioner Schaefer.
Pass.
Commissioner Menz.
Yes, I do have a few things. Thank you, President Forney. I wasn't sure when to say those words, but you all saw my community showed up a little bit today, and I knew that when the budget was presented, that the closure of the Wyndham Ice Rink would be a huge sticking point. I'm asking, and I've talked to the superintendent, and I think that there might be a direction forward, and I'm hoping for other ice rinks if there is that large of an impact in the community. This is a resource that when we take this away, it impacts families dramatically. I mean, my son lost his tooth there with one of the kids who's out there who's skating 8 hours a day. I mean, it is the epitome of what our parks do in the winter. And I know that we have the realities of budget cuts with ice rinks. I think that my community is upset at the lack of data around why we did that. And I'm, as a commissioner, a little bit upset about the fact that nobody called me and asked me, how would this impact your community? Because I could have told them and we could have found another rink. Like, I think that, you know, one of the things that's really, I love the staff that work here. I love the people I work with. I love this organization. I feel like as a commissioner, I want to be included sometimes because I can help us prevent responses that are impassioned. I mean, Brian lives in the community too. He's close to that area, and people show up, and they show up in a respectful way, and they don't show up a lot. They show up when it's important. And I think that I was really proud of some of the people who I know out there. I mean, because I got calls. I know some of you might have gotten emails. And I advised my community. I said, the park board is doing things to try and manage this space. We have to work with our budget. But they want to hear from you when this is really important. And I'm helping you all understand that I know what we want as a board, and I know there's another ice rink out there that it would not have as large of an impact. So, and the presumption that the board was presented a budget and then the boards were removed, we have not approved the budget. That's a difficult thing to navigate around, like, how do we change these decisions that actually haven't even been made. So I hope that we can find a solution. I know that I've talked to the superintendent. I know that people are understanding the impact of that budget decision. And please come out there. I mean, it is literally the rink that they filmed for Hockey Day, Minnesota. And this is a very big decision for this board in the future about acting boldly for climate change. You hear all of these people talking about ice. It is so important. And this budget lacks the ability for us to address that issue long-term, or maybe omits it. And I think that we need to really consider that. Final thing. I know we're going into these budget discussions. I want us to be able to have the ability to impact the budget, and I think that sometimes the process is difficult, as indicated even tonight. And I hope that we've worked together. Thank you, Commissioner Schaefer, for sending forward that amendment. That this work is hard, and it's important, and we don't always know everything. And 1 minute, 2 minutes doesn't always get us what we need. Reading for hours and hours on end. Let's work really hard to make sure that this budget reflects the values of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board in the city. Because right now, I don't know if it does. The closing of time to people, and I saw the answers to the questions. My community does not want that. Those 5 kids, those 5 young people who are sitting in the rec center between 8 and 9, that is who we're serving. That is why it's important. And instead of from 8 to 9, it'll now be 7 to 8. I think that I'm asking staff, I'm asking the leadership in this organization for help to figure out how we can close that gap differently. Because what it says to the community is I don't think what our values are, what the values are of the individuals in this room, or the values of the Minneapolis Park Board. But that's just me and my community. So thank you. I hope we can get to the end.
Commissioner Thompson? Pass. Oh, okay. Commissioner Musis?
Briefly, I would just like to invite my colleagues and the public to the Nokomis Community Center this weekend on Saturday from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. for the Nokomis Arts and Craft Fair. It's always a really amazing collection of artists and makers that bring all of the beautiful objects and foodstuffs and all sorts of other great goodies that I've just been pleased to be able to purchase and give to my family and friends during the holiday season. So I would just encourage you that you consider, if you have time, to stop by and check it out. It's a cool event and well worth your time. Thanks.
Commissioner Olson?
Yeah, just a couple. I will say, responding to you, Commissioner Menz, I do think on the rec centers, on that final hour, I do wonder if there's a kid at a rec center, 8 to 9, maybe those are the kids who need it the most. I don't know, just that. So I mean, it's a hard decision, and we'll discuss our budget as we move forward, but it's a thought I had. Anyway, I'm a little disappointed that we weren't in admin and finance. It wasn't moved that we were able to discuss this resolution to give a refund to the Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures. It was an opportunity, of our first opportunities, I think, to put our money where our mouth is as far as the Indigenous Reconciliation Action Plan that we've been working on and working very diligently on, and I think folks have really been moved about that. And so I think this is something that was our first opportunity to take strong action on that, and I'm sad that we couldn't discuss it. So just wanted to say that.
Commissioner Alper?
Yeah, you took the word out of my mouth. I think if I was going to give a term to the last 24 hours, it would be disappointment, quite frankly. Disappointment at the way the elections turned out. Nationally, nobody's said that yet, but I think it's a real wake-up call. The fact that 50% approximately of the populace voted for somebody who is anti-women, look at our board, who is openly racist and meets the definition of a fascist. So I personally am still reeling from the aftermath of that, as I know many people are around the country today. So I wanted to say that. I also, quite frankly, am disappointed, as Commissioner Olson said, that we did not discuss the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe resolution that was directed to the Admin and Finance Committee, which I don't sit on, which is why I didn't bring it forward. But it does affect a location within District 3. It affects an issue that has huge consequence in our city that's been a topic of many news articles, and that is our housing crisis and homeless encampments across the city. And I really saw that this resolution as a way to both address, dismantle historic inequities and how our park system was created, the fact that the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe ceded their land in 1837, facilitating our 1883 establishment of the Minneapolis park system, and the fact that 7 out of 10 people who are homeless in Minnesota today are either Native American or of people of color. So I hope that can be reconsidered at a later time.
Thank you. Vice President Benny.
Thank you, President Forney. So I sit to the left of me sits not only our president, but one of the greatest card givers of all time. And the card giver herself has had a birthday. I won't name the age because I'm not even sure I know it, or the specific date. But I'd like to give you this card, and full credit for remembering and purchasing the card goes to Commissioner Musich. So. No?
Someone actually beat me to it when I got here. This one was already in
circulation.
So thank you for
Didn't-
whoever
Meg,
did
did
that.
you-
I'm
did you buy it
pleased that
yourself?
we that we were all on the same page there.
Okay, whatever. Happy birthday. That's it for me.
Oh, thank you. Hey, you guys, I still am the oldest elected official in the city of Minneapolis. I'm damn proud of it. Anyway, I appreciated all the acknowledgement. Thank you, Commissioner Elper, in expressing your feelings about last night or yesterday, whatever. But we have a wonderful ray of sunshine that I think we all should celebrate, and that is the fact that the lottery funding for environment did pass. Woo-hoo! So I'm very, very excited. I don't know why. I just was so anxious about that one. And 77% supported it. So I'm really excited. And per lobbyist Rice, 75 million we have received since 2009. So that is a huge, huge thing. So I'm really, really proud of that, and can't wait to spend the next round. Anyway, and so I do have a birthday, shall we say, twin and everything, and so I'd like to wish happy birthday to Communications Director Summer. So happy birthday to you. All right, and on that, I will adjourn our meeting here. Oh, it's before 8 at least, 7:58. Thank you all.